Hi, everybody. It's the end. We're done. We're done with the series. We only have a 4-hour long video about T-Rex to go, and we never have to play Jurassic World Evolution 2 again. We might have to play Jurassic World Evolution 3. I'm sure that'll be announced like the day this video comes up or something.
Hey, Alex made a prediction in the Mosasaurus video.
We'll
see if that comes true.
We'll see if it comes true.
Check that. Go to that video.
Right. Now, it's been long awaited that we'll talk about T-Rex. This is probably the most famous dinosaur ever. A lot of people have predicted that we would save it till last. And while we did want to do it last, I do feel the need to say again, this is actually a real result. We did not roll it until now.
Yes.
And that is kind of amazing. That's especially amazing that given that for like the last 20 videos or so, I've been like, every episode I've been like, there's a chance we roll T-Rex. We need to figure out if we're actually going to do it this time or not. And then we just never have. Isn't nature amazing? Isn't statistics amazing?
Isn't nature amazing?
That it is. So we're going to talk about T-Rex in a few minutes. But first, I want to give a brief plug for the Sternberg Science Summer Camps. Registration for the 2025 season is closed. However, we did find out from the camp's organizer that if you are able to get your documents together quickly, there may still be the opportunity to participate in one of the field programs. So you should reach out to the Sternberg camps if you are a high school student in 2025 and you want to get experience working on a fossil dig. There may be a space for you. If not, keep them in mind. If you will still be a high school student next year or any other year, or whenever you're watching this video, reach out to them, look on their website and see if there are spots available, because the Sternberg camps are an amazing opportunity for young people, high school students, to get real experience in doing what paleontologists do. We are very proud to partner with them. I guess we have to disclose this is paid promotion, but we're very happy to do it. We would not promote anything on this channel that we did not like or support. We're pretty close with the people who run the Sternberg camps. Amelia is going to be an instructor at one of the Sternberg camps this summer, 2025. I don't know about in the future. I guess we'll see how time shakes out in future years. But that's all to say, we believe a lot in what they do. We think the most important thing for a young scientist or a young aspiring scientist to do is get familiarity with the tools of the trade and with like that kind of operational knowledge that you need. Both of these are things you can get from the Sternberg camps. They started a little bit too late for any of us to participate in them. So unfortunately, I can't point at any of us and say, this is where you get if you do this. We were all a little bit too old for them. But had they existed when I was a high school student, you bet I would have been an active and engaged participant probably every year of my high school experience. They are such an important and cool thing.
You betcha.
I think, James, aren't there also middle school camps?
I believe there are. Yes. I'm not as familiar with the details about what the middle school camps are like, but there are middle school camps. So if you're a middle schooler, you should also look into those.
Or the parent of a high schooler or middle schooler.
Yes. If you're a parent of a high schooler or middle schooler who is into paleontology and thinks they want to pursue a career in this, absolutely look into the Sternberg camps. They are a wonderful way to give your kid a leg up in their, in their aspired career. And if you're a student yourself, talk to your parents about them. See if it's something that you could wind up doing. They're really, really cool, wonderful opportunities, and just really important for giving you the sorts of skills that will give you a leg up as you go into the next phase of what you do.
Cool.
So thank you to the Sternberg camps for sponsoring a few of our episodes this year. And, we're just really excited to be able to spread the word about them. It's a really, really great opportunity.
It is indeed. And I believe one other thing to mention, too, is that they offer a number of scholarships for participants every year.
Yes, indeed.
To help out with the financial cost.
Yes. And that's important. And the other important thing is they are not all in Kansas. They are based at the Sternberg Museum, operated by Fort Hays State University in Kansas. But they are dispersed throughout the United States. I think they're all in the US, right? There's nothing in Canada.
I don't think so.
Yeah, they're all in the US.
I think they're all in the US, but they
at least in 2025.
Right, at least in 2025. And they are all over the country, dispersed in various places. So, if location's a consideration for you, if you don't want to go out to Kansas for a few weeks of your summer, you don't necessarily have to. There might be something closer to home. But one thing that's really cool is that each camp program is a distinct thing. Right. There are some that are similar versions, there are multiple field camps and things like that. But there are camps, I think this year, teaching you details of CT scanning and imaging fossils.
Ooh.
Amelia's running a camp about doing descriptive anatomy on a mosasaur specimen. Amelia, the one you're running is in Kansas, right?
Yes, that one will be based in Hayes at the university and at the museum.
Right.
It will be based.
But that's because that's where the specimen is. That makes sense.
But
they are all over
the camp is teaching skills applicable to other fossil vertebrates as well. It's not exclusively how to study mosasaurs.
Right. But your specific iteration this year is doing work on a mosasaur, right?
Yeah.
But yes, it's general taxonomy and systematic skills with that as the exemplar specimen. I don't know, like offhand, a full list of all of the different programs and what they offer. But if you're thinking about this, I would recommend you think a little bit about location and about content of each program, just to get, some sort of strike the balance of where you want to be and what you want to learn.
Yes, just to give you a little taste of some of the opportunities that were available in 2025. And again, I think they've kind of been expanding every year. So double check when you watch this and you're interested to see what's being offered. But in 2025, like James said, there's numerous field paleontology camps in several different states. They've got some in Kansas, some in North Dakota, some in Utah. There are kind of more general paleontology academy camps where you can, I think those might be different location to location. I'm not sure exactly what happens in those. But there are introductions to fossil preps. There's advanced fossil prep camps. There's a geology camp. There's a scientific illustration camp. There is a paleontology policy camp in Washington, D.C. So lots of opportunities that cater to lots of different interests that fall under the very broad umbrella that is paleontology. And like James said, these are opportunities that I wish I had growing up.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just so important when you're trying to find your into the field. I think, obviously personal connections with any paleontologists who you happen to have met are going to be helpful. But if you're applying for summer research opportunities, or you're trying to find a lab to work in where you're a student, say when you're in college, skills are going to just be an important part of that. Any researcher is going to want to take on somebody who, all else being equal, already has some of the skills they need to be successful in the lab.
Or a preparator.
Right, or a preparator, exactly. We know there's a lot of training involved in the job, but if I got applicants to do summer research with me, and I knew one of them I was going to have to teach everything they need to do, and one of them I don't need to teach some aspects, that becomes an important consideration, right? There's a combination of training and what skills you come in with, and every opportunity is trying to balance these things. So I think it's really worth thinking about this stuff if you want to bolster your resume and your prospects for future steps down the line. It is something that I can say, as somebody who now gets to evaluate student applications and summer research applications and all of that. It is part of our calculus of what we do, and so I can say wholeheartedly, this is a valuable thing for you to do if you're interested in paleontology, especially if you think you want to pursue it as a career. Not to say that you have to if you do the Sternberg camps. You also might just like paleontology and want to get some experience with it, which is also great. It's good no matter what. And I think that's all we have to really say about it right now. Great opportunity. Reach out to them if it's 2025 when you're watching this. Reach out to them. We anticipate that this might be one of our more popular videos, and so if you're in the likely event that you're watching this after spring of 2025, that's fine. Look into what programs are available. Contact them if it's getting towards spring after their deadlines. Again, there might be ways to get involved, but just keep an eye on their website if you are a student or if you're the parent of a student who might want to be involved in the Sternberg camps. Now,
without further ado,
without further ado, there's further ado. One thing we haven't pointed out for a few videos is that we have a Patreon.
Yes.
Have we not said that?
I think we've forgotten to plug it in a few videos. And so I'm just going to plug it now in case. We have a Patreon. If you want to support the Skeleton Crew, you could either found a science summer camp series and pay us to do an ad for you.
Ooh,
or
yes. That's a popular option.
It is very, very popular. Or you could support us on Patreon, which is great and goes a long way to helping us continue to make these videos.
I guess we'll accept that.
This is the end of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 series, and we are very, very excited to move into new ways of making videos about paleontology. We've got some very exciting ideas. If you want to support us as we enter that endeavor, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Otherwise, drop a like on the video, leave a comment. All helps us out as we try to grow our audience a little bit more, and we really appreciate that. A point of further ado, you may wonder why I'm wearing a medieval cowl around my neck. Well, if my voice sounds a little more nasal and annoying than usual, I'll explain that briefly. And that is that I've been ill for about a month now. I've been battling what appears to be a sinus infection that keeps dripping gunk and mucus down into my lungs. And I've coughed so hard for weeks that I pinched a nerve in my neck. And so this is
so cool.
It's so cool. I love getting older. I'm not even 30 yet. And this is what we're doing.
Oh, you gotta love it. Eventually you'll start hurting yourself in ways that you didn't know you could. Like the time I threw my back out cutting carrots. It was great.
Right. Scott,
are you joking?
Alex, I'm genuinely not joking. It was actually, this wasn't even something that happened recently. This was something that happened when I was just out of Michigan. I was like 23 or something, or 24 or something. And I had never had back issues before this. And I was helping my parents with dinner at home. I was just slicing carrots. And I just remember just kind of going, something feels weird. I was just like, I'm getting a sensation. And then I took one step and almost fell over because it was the most mind-numbingly excruciating pain I've ever experienced at that point.
The
and I had to
world's
go
hardest
lie down.
carrot?
No, I didn't even strain myself. It was just like chop, chop, chop. Something feels weird.
Ow.
And then it was like the predator was ripping my spine out of my back while I was still alive. I have no idea how that happened.
Listen, I must say, I did not know that I could cough enough to pinch a nerve in my neck, but it hurts. So this is a heating pad. It's warming up my scalene muscles, between which the brachial plexus passes, and that's what's actually the nerve that's aggravated here. So, we're just taking it easy. I'm not on muscle relaxers right now. I do have muscle relaxers, but I didn't take them before recording this video.
Oh, that would have been a good video.
They haven't affected me cognitively that much. I did tell my superiors and students this, so I can say it. I did teach a few anatomy labs this fall on muscle relaxers too, because of the same issue. And they were all like, powerful. This is very funny. My muscles, it's impossible to make me relax. It is simply
He's the
impossible.
hot doctor from the pit.
Which one is that?
Yeah, which one?
Yeah. They're all pretty good looking.
Sorry, the hot male doctor from the pit.
Which one?
Again,
there's one.
No,
there's the hot one.
He's talking about John Halo, Dr. Robbie himself.
No, I'm talking about the other one, the young one.
Oh, you're talking about Langdon?
Matt Lanter. I guess Dr. Robbie is hot too.
I prefer Dr. Robbie. Anyway, I also just took an antibiotic that I am using to fight the sinus infection that's been raging within my craniofacial skeleton for months, or for weeks, I should say.
There's been quite too much biotic happening in there.
Yes, and I'm very antibiotic at this stage of my life. So that's why I'm wearing a heating pad. That's why I just took an antibiotic on camera, because it's been 12 hours since my last dose, and I want to take that like clockwork. And now I think it's time to tell you who I am, because it is very possible this will be the first Skeleton Crew video you see. This is a pretty popular dinosaur. We've noticed these tend to attract new viewers. And so I'll briefly tell you that I'm Dr. James Napoli. I am a paleontologist. I work at Stony Brook University in New York, where I teach human anatomy to health science professional students, dental students, PA students, physical therapy students. And for about half the year, I spend the other half of the year researching dinosaurs. I study dinosaur evolution, and I specifically have spent the last few years working on tyrannosaurs. So I'm very excited for this episode.
My name is Amelia Zilo. I am currently a PhD candidate at the American Museum of Natural History in the Richard Gilder Graduate School. At the time that this video comes out, my title will have changed, but I will not say it as such because it has not yet occurred, and I don't want to jinx myself because that would be an embarrassing edit for our editor to make.
We would just do the red letter media, like the sad horn from The Price is Right.
Anyway, I don't work on tyrannosaurs, but I've been exposed to them through osmosis via both James and my undergraduate advisor. So I feel like I know them better than I want to.
That's a good way to put it. Oh, sorry, Scott.
No, it's all good. But no, that is correct. My My name is Scott Johnston. I am the vertebrate paleontology fossil preparator and technician at Harvard University's Museum of Comparative Zoology. And over half of my entire life that I have spent in fossil prep labs, I have actually worked with one tyrannosaur. I worked with that tyrannosaur very, very closely, though. So we have an understanding. Let's put it that way.
Right.
But I've worked on a bunch of different critters, from basically you name it on the vertebrate tree of life, and I've probably worked on it or something close to it, or at least in that family group. But tyrannosaurs are one that was only exposed to me relatively recently, at least in the professional sense.
Yes. And Scott, if you're talking about what I think you're talking about, I think I bore witness to this event.
You did indeed.
He did a wonderful job.
Yes.
It was an intense moment. We were joking about the pit earlier. It felt like a scene out of the pit.
It kind of did.
It was very, very it was very tense, but like for good reasons. It was important work.
Yeah.
Had to be done quickly. And Scott did a great job.
Cool.
As he so often does.
Oh, thank you.
Am I next? Well, my name is Alex Rubenstahl, and I'm here to say my dissertation will arrive on another day. I will not
It's been
be.
a while since you've done that one.
I'm Alex Rubenstahl. I'm a PhD candidate from Yale University, and I love Scott. Which, because of the section that was cut earlier,
That just seems like a profession.
that
not
just
an
seems like
apology.
Yep.
Longtime viewers of the channel will know what's up.
He loves Scott as if he were his own.
My own.
My own.
That's it. Not everything has to be like a whole thing.
I'm Dalton Meyer, freshly 30, freshly out of the 20s. And I'm also a PhD candidate at Yale University. And much like Amelia, by the time this video comes out, my title too will have changed. And much like Amelia, I'm going to leave it at that for now. But it's exciting times in the world. My interest is very broadly in the evolution of reptiles. That has centered around squamate reptiles, lizards and snakes, which are the current focus of what I'm doing, and will likely be the future focus as well. However, I have branched out into most other reptile groups at this point. Pretty much all of them, I think, including dinosaurs, including the dingosaur. Although no tremendous focus on tyrannosaurs as of yet. But who knows? The winds are ever changing. But what we do knows, dear viewer, is that together
We're
the skeleton
crew.
Crew.
We sure are. Dalton,
yes,
I think we've given people enough context about who we are,
I think so.
and I think we should release Tyrannosaurus Rex.
James, are you suggesting that 25 minutes into the video on T-Rex, we show a T-Rex on the screen?
We could do that. But through the magic of editing, it might only be 22 minutes.
True. Let there be Rex.
Roar goes the T-Rex.
Oh
That
man,
it does.
God, that roar is. They
Iconic.
cook with that so well.
It is iconic.
yeah.
It is just the sound of T-Rex.
It is. And in fact, this is a good segue into me talking a little bit about how I think we're going to structure this video. Amelia, we'll let you tell us what T-Rex or Tyrannosaurus Rex, to use its full Christian name, means in a moment. But this is really the definitive Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? Like, this is what pretty much everybody imagines when they think of a living T-Rex.
It's damn near
I'm
the
sure.
definitive dinosaur.
Yeah, I'm not embarrassed to say this being me too. Like, if you just tell me, imagine a T-Rex in your mind, I think of this before I do any other depiction.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
Is it
no,
100%
absolutely.
accurate? No, it's not. There are some inaccuracies, and we might talk a little bit about some of the detailed design changes, but overall, it's a pretty good T-Rex. relative to a lot of other stuff in this franchise and a lot of other things in this game in particular. And it's become iconic, right? This is an animal that is portrayed so convincingly in Jurassic Park that I think many people just feel like they've seen what a real T-Rex looks like. And I especially think I've heard what a T-Rex sounded like. I can't imagine them not sounding like this.
Yeah.
Well, what if you watched a YouTube video of someone editing bird and crocodile sounds together?
Oh my god, like if the bird sounds were slower and pitched down a few octaves?
Yeah, wasn't there that TikTok that keeps going around every once in a while of like basically using the ration, like using the whole thing of like Sandia National Labs that did the Parasaurolophus thing, found out what T-Rex sounded like, and it's just slowed down bird noises.
Yes.
This is your plug to fight misinformation, which is that yes, Sandia Labs did work on dinosaur sounds.
Yes,
with the Parasaurolophus and only Parasaurolophus.
They did real work with that.
There is a video that circulates of like here scientists have figured out what all of these different dinosaurs sound like.
Wrong.
And none of those are based on science at all. They are maybe based on some very broad scientific ideas. It's a fun exercise in sound design, certainly. I've got nothing
cool
against
sounds,
that.
yeah.
But I do have something against them being like, this is what paleontologists have found. This is the most up-to-date. No, it's not. If you see this, share this. Tell people.
Yes.
This is wrong. We have to like.
It is one of the most commonly shared links I get from my like non-professional friends who are like, "Yo, is this real?" And then I say, "No." Also, how did you get recommended this? I know what your interests are.
You know, also the one that baffles me in there is that for some reason they always have Dryptosaurus as one. It's like, of all the things,
right? Dryptosaurus, known from so much material.
Well, Dryptosaurus sounds like Ski Mask the Slump God because it has faucet failure.
Exactly.
That's for a very specific subset of our audience, that one.
That it is. Yeah, if we were like different kinds of content creators, I would say we should like make a stitch with that and just be like, no, this is wrong.
But bear that in mind and actively fight disinformation.
Yes. We don't know what almost any dinosaur sounded like. We have some inclination of what Parasaurolophus sounded like.
Oh,
That's
but
what we got.
James, we know what 10,000 species of dinosaurs sounded like.
Oh my god. That's true. And if you pitch them down an octave, you get every dinosaur.
And if you pitch down a chicken specifically, you get Quetzalcoatlus in Prehistoric Planet.
Or, alternatively, a puff of feathers. If you pitch down a chicken. Come on, that was a
no.
That bird getting obliterated by a baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's pitching down a pigeon, I think. That's different.
Okay.
That was one of my favorite, and by favorite I mean most horrifying videos I saw as a child on the internet for the first time. Just, being a little kid, being like, oh yeah, are there edgy videos? And seeing that bird get vaporized by a baseball, I was like, okay. I did. All right. Well, let's talk about Tyrannosaurus Rex. Amelia, What does its name mean?
I have to look this one up. This is a new one for me. It's very difficult.
You've never heard of this before?
No.
Tyrannosaurus Rex? The
Well,
Hell Creek Megatheropod?
She was a fantastic lady.
Anyways, no, that's a joke. I know what it means. Tyrant Lizard King.
Yeah. Just one of the best names ever conjured.
An all-timer.
Seriously.
Sometimes when you're naming something, you just, like, I've certainly gotten this feeling where you just, like, you feel this little vibration when you come across the right name. You're like, that's the right name for this thing. You don't always get to use it. But sometimes you have that feeling. And I imagine that's what Henry Fairfield Osborn felt while he was naming T-Rex.
Mm-hmm.
He probably then felt the urge to write something horribly racist. But for one moment, he was doing something that wasn't incredibly evil, and that was naming T-Rex.
Sitting in his office desk like the doctor from Strangelove. Like just keep grabbing his arm. It's like, that's such a good name.
And it is. It's a great name. The Tyrant Lizard King is what this thing is. For a little bit of context, when this was discovered, we had already found a few tyrannosaurs. This is not the first one we know of. There were teeth being found in the western U.S. for a little while. Just also a side note, we found tyrannosaur teeth like way before we found body fossils in a lot of in the western U.S. Remember, sometimes you might be in a rock unit and think there's only crap here, and then you can keep digging and find really good stuff. We weren't finding whole skeletons for a while. These teeth were generally referred to as dinodon, like Deino, meaning terrible tooth. They were recognized to be very, very large theropod teeth.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have some,
Oblisodon?
right?
I think some of them are Yale specimens, yeah.
Because Cope... Well, I'll let you do the history. I don't
Well, Dinodon was named by Leidy in 1856. Dinodon horridus.
What about Oblisodon? How does that fit into this?
Well, Oblisodon is interesting. So, Oblisodon is named, let me check the year, 1868. Type teeth were from the... I think type teeth are said to be from the Judith River Formation. I'm curious to know if that's actually the case. Regardless, Oblisodon teeth are Tyrannosaur premaxillary teeth. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but these Tyrannosaur premax teeth are kind of chisel-shaped. This is a very early appearing synapomorphy of the group. This is one of the features we use to say that Proceratosaurus, which we've talked about previously, is a Tyrannosaur. This is something that appears super early in their evolution. My speculation is that these originated as specialized teeth to help them scrape flesh off of carcasses. Whether they were scavengers or predators, it's not really that important. I've seen some joking suggestions online that they were preening teeth.
Like a lemur tooth comb?
I don't think they were that. Thank you, Alex. They're serrated. In some animals they're serrated, and some they're not. But at least in T-Rex they're serrated. I don't actually recall offhand if Proceratosaurus has serrated premax teeth or not. I think it does. So they're probably for eating things. I think they're getting the chisel-like point to scrape meat off of bones. Which kind of ties in with some areas of T-Rex paleobiology that we'll talk about in a little bit. But anyway, we've got these tooth taxa. The Oblisodon holotype and paratype, I believe, have been lost. Or no, they were syn types. And they were lost in the mail. About
in the
25, 30 years ago. Yes, they were mailed by FedEx, I think, and never arrived at their destination, and they're lost now.
They're wheeled back into the big warehouse where they keep the Ark of the Covenant and
right. There are casts of the teeth. They're in the Academy of Natural Sciences, I believe. We don't really know that much about them. So Oblisodon teeth are kind of interesting because unlike a lot of Tyrannosaurid premaxillary teeth, they're unserrated. So they're just kind of blunted chisels, which speaks to me as being very again, made for flesh scraping more than anything else.
Yeah, and they're serrated in T-Rex, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and so I asked because I think I've heard when people kind of bring up the idea of T-Rex and Nanotyrannus, that the serrations on the premaxillary teeth might be important for that issue.
What's Nanotyrannus? So anyway, these are so we've got Oblisodon and Dinodon as these two names. Generally both considered dubious now. Oblisodon especially because the type specimen no longer exists, and regardless, it's probably not diagnostic. Dinodon was used longer as a name because I think it was not recognized that these were undiagnostic elements for a longer period of time.
No, it's sad.
It is a good name, and I'm going to.
What does Oblisodon mean?
What does it mean? Backwards flowing tooth.
That's a bad name.
It's a bad name. I don't know why.
Flow backwards like tooth.
Yes. Yeah, which also, they're not particularly recurved, so I don't really understand. There's an image on Wikipedia. We'll probably put it up in the video. It's pretty straight. It doesn't flow backwards that much.
The guy picked it up in the wrong direction. He's like, it curved that way.
Right.
Oh, maybe one of the carina is medially directed like it is in some theropods.
It's not really it's weird.
just dumb.
Well, they're premax teeth, so
And Wikipedia has this to say, which is that the meaning of the generic name is uncertain because Leidy himself gave no etymology or explanation of the intended meaning.
Hell yeah, Leidy.
Let's go. Man, that man looked over my shoulder at all of my fossil prep work for a couple of years.
He did.
How did he
still
do
looks
that?
over that prep lab.
He
to
did
this
that
day.
because his death mask was in the prep lab.
Cool.
Well, his eyes are closed, so he wasn't really watching.
I could
He was
feel it
listening.
though.
He's like
His eyes are only closed when
Catholic.
you look at him.
Okay, so I'm checking the notes here, and I'm just trying to, and by the notes I mean papers that I've saved in my library. So the name Dinodontidae winds up being the main like used family name for these animals, even as we start finding better remains, as like more paleontological exploration is being conducted in Western North America. In this time period, though, we do get kind of the first North American tyrannosauroid that's any good. And by any good, I mean not very good at all, but good by the standards of the time.
not a tooth.
Not a tooth, which is Dryptosaurus, which was named in 1866. So actually predates Oblisodon as a name. Dryptosaurus was found in New Jersey in a marl pit. It was, at the time, the most completely known tyrannosauroid. And it is, yes.
I have a dumb question.
Yeah, sure.
Was it at the time recognized as something distinct from Allosaurus, or were they like, nah, it's just another Allosaurus?
No, it was given the name Laelaps aquilunguis, meaning aquilunguis means eagle-clawed, and Laelaps was named after a dog in Greek mythology whose name literally translates to storm wind.
Good name.
So
Cool.
it's also a pretty good name. Laelaps had previously been used for a bug,
Oh, that's why they
Right.
had to change it. I was
which is
going to
why
ask.
now this is fun because it's a Bone Wars thing, right?
I actually didn't know that.
It's a Bone Wars thing. I believe it was actually this specimen that Cope was invited out to this marl pit in Jersey to see the specimen as it was being dug out, and
remember this.
invited Marsh out to go see it with him. And then while visiting the marl pit
Yes.
with Cope, this was the first time Marsh went behind Cope's back and just went to the foreman and was like, I imagine handed him a lot of money and was like, any future discoveries, you should call me, not him. And the foreman was like, that sounds good.
This was the shot heard around the world of the Bone Wars.
It reminds me of that scene in Death of Stalin where they're like running to try to get to
Yep.
before the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's his daughter that they're trying to get to.
Right,
Yeah, they're
right.
like yelling her name through the forest and stuff.
So
Svetlana, yes.
So Cope called it, and I quote, "the finest discovery I have yet made." And by which, of course, he means somebody else found.
God,
and
gotta love
I mean,
Cope.
it puts into perspective how bad paleontology, like how bad most of the material we were dealing with at that time was. Like, this is what would now be considered a pretty fragmentary specimen. Not unnameable, but not that much of it. There's parts of a maxilla and dennary. Like, and by part of a maxilla, I mean like a very small fragment with like one tooth in it. A chunk of dennary with a few alveoli. Some teeth, some caudal verts, humeri, part of the hand, part of the pelvis, and a nearly complete left hind limb. There's a metatarsal that might go to it. I've looked at the material firsthand, and I am not confident that it goes to the rest of the skeleton. It looks like it's from a different kind of animal entirely. But it was found at the same locality, and I don't think any other skeleton has come out of there, so the assumption is it's probably just that it had a weird metatarsal. I don't really know.
Could be.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know that much about animals like this for reasons I'll get into in a minute, but this is that first North American Tyrannosaurid. It's not that well known. It is recognized to not be Allosaurus, and there were pretty quickly some suggestions that this might have affinities to tyrannosaurs once we had better material from out west. That case was not strongly made until, I believe, the 90s by Kenneth Carpenter, and then was made very forcefully by Steve Brussati, Roger Benson, and Mark Norell when they redescribed the whole material monographically and said, like, yeah, it's pretty unquestionable that this is a tyrannosauroid. which is pretty interesting.
I didn't know that was that recent. Jeez.
Yeah, it's pretty recent.
So the famous Leaping Laylabs painting.
Yes.
That was done and commissioned before we had Tyrannosaurus, right?
I think that painting postdates Tyrannosaurus existing. I will look at the exact date. It's 1897, so it does predate Tyrannosaurus. It predates all of the others, actually. Yeah, no, you're right.
Hence
I thought
why
it
it kind of
later.
looks a little bit more Allosaur-y.
Yeah, I guess. Okay. It looks cool, though.
and
It does.
it does, and the Leaping Laylapse painting, which we'll put on screen. But yeah, so Leaping Laylapse painting is really famous in paleo art circles because the first depiction of dinosaurs as warm-blooded animals, or not explicitly warm-blooded, I guess, but very active animals, right? And this pose has been mimicked in one of my favorite skeletal mounts that I've ever seen, which is at the New Jersey State Museum, which I'll also send a picture of right now, which was done by RCI very recently, reconstructing these animals kind of as best we can. There are a lot of unknowns about them, but their skulls are generally made to look like a fairly nondescript tyrannosauroid. And they're portrayed as like kind of a modern interpretation of what Dryptosaurus may have looked like, but in the same pose. And it's really cool. Beautiful skeletal mount.
It's kind of a common like meme in like paleontology reconstructions. Like if memory serves, there's at least one more skeletal mount that's doing it, and it gets referenced in there's some there's some Tyrannosaurus doing it, which also looks amazing.
That's cool.
And every once in a while, it gets referenced in dinosaur media, like documentaries and stuff like that.
It's the Akira slide of paleo art.
it actually genuinely is the Akira slide of paleo art. It was referenced in like either Dinotasia or Dinosaur Evolution. I forget exactly which one it's in. Of the Cryolophosaurus.
Oh, yes.
Do that pose as
well.
well.
Aren't those the same documentary also? Like,
well, they are, but they have different footage in each one, and I don't remember if one of them has Cryolophosaurus, but one of them doesn't. And
I see.
One of them has the Utah Raptor scene in it, and one of them doesn't. Like, I think one of them has the Guanlong scene in it, and one of them doesn't. I don't know. It's yes, they are the same documentary, but there's bits and pieces in different ones. It's very weird.
What a wonderful and non-confusing way to make a piece of media.
Mm-hmm. Especially because there should just be one, because they did the best thing ever, which is get Werner Herzog to narrate a dinosaur documentary, and I'm not sure if he knew what he was narrating when he was in the studio, because if memory serves, all of his narrations are just interstitials about how like life is fragmentary and meaningless and everything will return to dust and everything will die, which I think was just like they put him in a recording studio with a live mic and just
I was going to say, was he just in the shower or something?
God, I need to read his autobiography that he narrates.
Oh, it's so good. He's got a story in there about his dad. Never mind.
All right. Well,
anyways, continue, please.
Yeah. So we get that animal, and then we start finding other Tyrannosaurus specimens kind of quickly. Not the first thing named. We get another cope name, because of course we do. But what's kind of interesting is that for the most part, the Hell Creek Formation and its equivalents don't really get picked that much in the Bone Wars.
Yeah.
Like. And I don't know why.
That is funny.
They're pretty extensive. Like it's hard to miss them. I don't know why they don't get touched that much. Maybe it's just that they're focusing more in like Colorado at that point because of all the Morrison discoveries.
I wonder if it was a logistical thing. I wonder if it was just they were constrained to
like,
they were taking the railroads out there, right?
Yeah, maybe they were constrained near rail lines, and then the Transcontinental Railroad went through Colorado. Might have been that. But regardless, we get another cope name. We get Manospondylus gigas, named in 1892, named for a single vertebra that's now at the Amon age. Very, very poorly preserved.
It's so ugly.
It's so ugly. Now, there is one fun detail here, which is that Pete Larson thinks he's relocated that quarry.
Oh,
based
cool.
on Cope's notes. And found more of apparently a diagnosable T-Rex specimen there. I think it's their specimen named E.D. Cope.
Oh.
Which is also the one that's now notorious for being like really big. If that's a diagnosable T-Rex specimen, there is an argument to be made that the name for the taxon is actually Manospondylis.
Oh no.
Well, no,
Right.
there isn't.
What's that?
Right. Because it's a nomen protectum.
Yes, I think was T-Rex officially designated a nomen
Yes.
protectum? It was.
I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
Yeah. So that is the thing. You can tell the ICCN we should not stop using this name. And that has either happened informally or formally with T-Rex. I could not remember if T-Rex was officially made a nomen protectum or not. It could be a nomen oblitum, which is a forgotten name, which is that. Yes, if the name has not been used after 1899 in a scientific journal, which I think Manospondylis has not been, and the preferred junior synonym is not in wide use, then you can basically say we've forgotten that name existed. So you can just have a situation where you say nobody has used this in well over a century, and we are using the other version of the name. So it's not
Quite a bit.
automatic. What'd you say?
Quite a bit we're using the other name.
Well, yes, with T-Rex we're using it quite a bit, but I think this is to protect, yes, if you name something in 1890 and then nobody talks about that animal again ever, it doesn't then mean that the name is automatically forgotten. But it's specifically nobody's used it in a long time, and we are using a different name.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think regardless, T-Rex would hold as a name. But I don't know. I kind of think it would be funny if we lost the name T-Rex. Not that I want to, but it would be kind of funny.
I think it is the nomen oblitum thing. I don't seem to be able to find an official nomen protectum for T-Rex.
Okay, and a nomen protectum, for anybody not in the know, is when you can officially. I basically it's the procedural version of making something forgotten, where it is not that it is forgotten by a length of time of disuse, but you are explicitly petitioning to say, even though this thing should be the valid name, we would prefer to use a different one for a good reason.
Yes, it's part of a more complicated kind of extensive set of rules about how to ensure something is forgotten. If there's a joke popular online and SNL picks it up, that's
right.
a good way to ensure it's forgotten.
Right. The presidents of humor, SNL.
Yeah, they're good sometimes. I'm being a little too mean.
A little too mean.
Alex is never that.
Well, I mean, Alex is often, Alex is infrequently a little too mean in the same way that SNL is frequently funny.
There we go. Full circle.
Anyway, so we have this name from this vert, but we only really start to get good Tyrannosaur fossils at the turn of the 20th century. And we kind of get 3 specimens all at once. Actually, really 4. We get the holotype of T-Rex, which is named first by Osborn, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Just thank Christ, the first one of these good specimens named becomes T-Rex. And I guess it's actually more than 4 specimens, but we get a few T-Rexes all in rapid succession. We get another specimen that was found in Wyoming, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Wyoming, that was found near armor plates of an ankylosaur.
Cool.
And this led Osborn, who, as we know, was a very good paleontologist, to say this was a version of T-Rex with armor. And he named it Dynamosaurus imperiosus.
Which, and he's wrong, obviously.
Also a good
But
name.
that
Cool
would have
idea,
been
though.
so
Good
cool.
Right. If we could bring back Dynamosaurus, I would be thrilled.
There has to be.
Oh, seriously.
In the great tapestry of life, I'm choosing to believe that there was a tyrannosaur with gigantic plate osteoderms.
Oh, it would be so cool.
It could happen. If sloths can have if a mammal can do it, a dinosaur can. A theropod dinosaur can.
Isn't nature amazing?
Isn't nature amazing?
And James, speaking on your that Osborn was a famously very, very, very good anatomist and scientist. correct me if I'm wrong. You've told before that there's a Tyrannosaur skull or brain case that's been like cut into at the AMNH that Osborne hand labeled, and then there is also accessioned into the collection a note correcting all of his labels that are wrong.
Those are separate skulls.
Those are
yes.
separate skulls.
Yes,
Okay.
we found a number of T-Rexes pretty fast at AMNH. And, this is interesting for several reasons. I'm just going through my PDF library right now. I'm just trying to pull up the original paper because I thought it would be fun to have it up.
Yeah.
Now.
Could be fun. Could be interesting. Might be neither. But so they're two separate skulls. One is a brain case that was absolutely hemisected with a diamond saw because they wanted to make a physical endocast. I'm not gonna clown on him too hard though, because what else would you have possibly done at that time?
Been better at science.
Well, right, but there's no other way to make an endocast. It's not like they could CT scan it. If you do want to study the brains, you gotta do that. And I guess what he probably noticed is we've got a number of these things, and this is the worst of them. So let's look at that brain. It's one of the foundational studies in paleoneurology. I mean, Osborne was not a great scientist, but Osborne, I hate to use this phrase, he was kind of an ideas guy.
He's the George Lucas of paleontology.
Right. The reason I'm trying to get through a lot of this history now is that I think it's kind of interesting that the first time we get any good material of Tyrannosaurs, we get T-Rex immediately. And we do get 3 taxa pretty quickly. We actually have a number of other named things that are not considered valid. There were a lot of additional species assigned to Laelaps or Dryptosaurus. They were Laelaps. I'm sorry, we get all these other species: Oblisodon lateralis, Laelaps explanatus, Laelaps falculus, and then Laelaps hazenianus, Laelaps cristatus, and Laelaps livifrons. We also get Laelaps incrustatus at one point, which I think is Gorgosaurus or Albertosaurus. It's probably Albertosaurus, based on where it's from. And then, in this paper from 1905, we get Tyrannosaurus rex. Beautiful name. This is the holotype specimen. We don't yet know about the better specimen that's at the American Museum of Natural History. So this is the specimen at the Carnegie Museum. Critically includes a humerus, so we already are learning these things did not have very large arms. There's also a difference with Dryptosaurus, which has enormous arms with enormous claws. It's very, very beefy. Then we get Dynamosaurus imperiosus, which is no longer real. And then we get a new name, and this makes sense. This is previously Laelaps incrustatus. We get Albertosaurus sarcophagus. So Albertosaurus is also named by Osborne in this paper. 3 amazing names. Sarcophagus, meaning literally in Greek flesh eater. That is why a sarcophagus was called that.
It is also, I think it has been said before, it's wild that we call those things that.
Right.
What an incredibly dramatic name for a fancy coffin.
Right. So it literally means the meat-eating lizard from Alberta. Now, Albertosaurus, unfortunately, none of these specimens are great. The bone preservation is good. The completeness of the material is not so good. It is a maxilla, I think, both lacrimals, both ectopterygoids, and a squamosal, and both deniries. So it's not terrible, and you've got a lot of diagnostic elements, but it's not a complete articulated skull or anything. The postcrania is fairly scrappy. It was not a very complete specimen. It's diagnostic, but not very complete. The Albertosaurus skull, and I think I talked about this in our Albertosaurus video, was basically destroyed by the people who discovered it. Because they were geological surveyors who saw the skull, and they were like, well, we got gumption. And they had only gumption
and power tools.
We have gumption and dynamite. Let's get that thing back
and a classic Alberta accent.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
I didn't feel like I should, given tension between the U.S. and Canada recently, I didn't want to make fun of Canadians, so I'll do some American hick accent.
Hey, gumption and dynamite is what got Harvard the Chronosaurus, so don't knock it till you try it.
Perhaps the Maniac also appeared for this. We don't know that the Maniac was not involved.
We can neither confirm nor deny.
Right. So they blew it up and dragged the shattered remains back to Ottawa. I have studied this skull. It ain't great. It is basically a Tyrannosaur skull if you shear it here. So you've got like the lower part of the snout. You're looking at the palate in dorsal view. And and mandibles. Some of the brain case is also preserved. It's just not in great shape.
James, are you as a Tyrannosaur expert, can you confirm that its head didn't just do that?
Its head might have just did that. Okay. It's like, I forget what movie it is, but somebody like has a laser go through them and then just the top of their head falls off. There's probably a lot of movies.
There's a lot of movies that do that.
Well, that's basically what happened to it.
I think that's in Cube. And oh wait, there's also like that opening scene of Ghost Ship where the steel cable rips across everybody dancing in the
Oh, there's the first Resident
the
Evil
ballroom.
too.
Yep. Yeah, the first Resident Evil. It's a lot of good scenes like that.
Well, anyway, that's what happened to it. As a result of gumption, and it suffered a gumption-induced injury.
Check the charts, Dr. Robbie.
You could argue.
Honestly, I have too.
While studying the holotype, you yourself suffered a gumption.
Well,
injury.
That's the holotype of T-Rex, not Albertosaurus. We're not talking about that right now.
Well, I said while studying the holotype of T-Rex. I clarify. I remember which specimen.
Well, the bigger surprise is that I remember which specimen. Yes, this is a good time to mention that while studying the holotype of T-Rex, I did crack my head on the unfortunately completely preserved pubis, and suffered a mild to moderate concussion.
What is quite possibly the first definitively recorded Tyrannosaur on human injury.
Yeah,
folks, they're calling it one of the funniest things that's ever happened.
You know what really startled me was when I posted on Twitter about it, and then I think I had to pee and came back, and I already had like over 100 likes and a bunch of retweets, and I was
that
like,
went viral.
This is going viral really fast.
Yes.
Yeah. Just humiliate yourself. It's an amazing way to get a bunch of Twitter followers.
Hey, remember, like the biggest tweet that I ever had was announcing that I got laid off from the AMNH.
Oh God, was it really?
I got like 14,000 likes on it or something like that. It was actually gigantic.
Oh, I'm sorry, Scott.
Oh, it's fine.
He's all right. He survived.
He lived.
Okay, so this is all to say we're getting a good picture of what tyrannosaurs look like. But we don't get a nearly perfect specimen until a few years later when AMNH 5027 is discovered. And that is like just one of the best specimens you could possibly imagine. It doesn't have limbs.
It's so pretty.
Weirdly enough, it's just an axial column and a head and a pelvic girdle. It's basically a snake, yeah.
It is a snake. It's a fossorial tyrannosaur.
Yeah. So no limbs, but it is like exquisitely preserved, almost undistorted, except the head is italicized. It was crushed a little bit much on one side. And
there's specifically one displaced bone that gives it a very, very close connection, identifiable connection to the Jurassic Park franchise.
That's true.
What?
I know. It's very, very funny. It's an ectopterygoid that's displaced.
That's what it is.
And protrudes into the anterorbital fenestra, which...
It's the right ectopterygoid that's floated up into the anterorbital fenestra, if memory serves.
I believe so.
Cool.
Because you can see it if you look on the back.
Right. And so it's a little like... Well, it gives it an abnormal profile. And as alluded to... this abnormal profile is visible in the logo of both the cover art in the original Jurassic Park novel and on the Jurassic Park poster. And the logo of the whole franchise.
And the reason why the logo of the whole franchise, by extension of that first book, is the way that it is because the cover artist for the book lived in New York and went to the AMNH and traced the skeletal drawing of the T-Rex from the brochure.
Cool.
Wait, really?
Yes.
I would imagine it may just be this image that I've found online. I don't have an image from the old brochure, but I'm going to send it to confirm.
Well, I also think
he gave a TED talk about this, about like what goes into designing like book covers, and he talked about how I think one of the tenets that he talked about was like using the resources that you have around you, and he was like, I got this contract from Michael Crichton about this book about dinosaurs, and so I went to the AMNH and they gave me this pamphlet and it had this really cool skeleton of a T-Rex on it, so I traced that and used it.
cool.
And Dalton, I think you're right that it's probably this image from the brochure there. You can see the bulge of the ectopterygoid protruding into the antorbital fenestra.
I think you're right.
And so that's what it is.
And on the the actual skull on display at the AMNH, they do have all of the bones labeled, and that one is labeled correctly.
Yes. Now, are all of them labeled correctly?
No.
Perhaps not. But that's fine. Now, one thing I want to say is that, like, when T-Rex was discovered, it's not just Osborne who realizes that this is a, like, really cool animal. It is like a media frenzy. This is the first time, to my knowledge, that you get a dinosaur, like a dinosaur discovery, and the press goes ape about it. It is a huge event that the AMN, like when the AMNH announces to the press and to the public and to the scientific community, we have found the largest known meat-eating dinosaur. They call it, one of the headlines refers to it as the prize fighter of antiquity, which is a great name.
I tried to get that. I was really curious to read that article after you said it, and I couldn't find. Like, I think it's paywalled by the Times, unfortunately.
No,
I think it is. But like, it is just every media outlet is gushing about how cool this thing is.
Would you say that?
Yeah, the prize fighter of antiquity discovered and restored. I'm sorry, there's a few other headlines here. The absolute warlord of the earth.
Cool.
That's better. I like that one a lot.
The most formidable fighting animal for which there is any record. And of course, the king of all kings.
These sound. This sounds like, honestly, the Jurassic World Evolution 3. I think that when they do the little announcements of like bringing the dinosaurs out, this is what you need to. Every T-Rex that you bring out needs to have all of these titles preceding it, like Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones, where the titles just continue.
Yeah, I agree, but I'm not a complete wavelength with Alex, because I imagine just like a random title, like just the game chooses one every time one comes out, and then the John Cena music. Yeah.
No. They need to get specifically just for T-Rex. They need to get the Are You Ready to Rumble guy to do it.
And for Tarbosaurus' release, they can get John Cena speaking Chinese.
So
now I have a question. In your earlier comment, a serious thought. In your earlier comment about kind of news media cycles about dinosaurs, and I don't deny that T-Rex was probably the big one. I'm curious, like, what were the news cycles around some of like the huge sauropods from like out
those
west?
Were also pretty,
like Brontosaurus and
big.
stuff.
Oh yeah.
They were pretty insane, I think, too, right, Dalton?
I think so. There's like lots of headlines about biggest thing ever.
Yeah,
but that was like 50 plus years before that. No, not quite. What's the math on that?
No, they would have been
40,
described
30 to 40.
Well, no, because those are all that Como stuff is like in the 80s, right?
1880s.
1880s.
Well,
So like 20 years.
but like the first.
Sure, but a little while.
No. But like the first like sauropod skeleton to be mounted and get like the real big like explosion of popularity was after. That was in like 1905 or something, right?
There's a diagram that 1905.
Which one was that?
is Brontosaurus.
Brontosaurus, yeah.
Yeah. And like a lot, like I'm not saying that T-Rex was the first thing to get any media attention, but I think it's the first thing that gets like this kind of overblown, insane coverage. Like with the sauropods, I feel like it was more, I'm not going to say honest, but it was more like we found an enormous animal. Versus, I don't know, the absolute warlord of the earth is like, it's silly in a fun way that we still benefit from quite a lot. The last point I want to make is that T-Rex really winds up entering the cultural consciousness pretty quickly and like completely usurping Allosaurus, which was the go-to big theropod in media for like a few years, because very shortly.
You all right there?
Yeah, I'm fine. Very shortly after they name it and they announce all of this, Barnum Brown finds AMNH 5027. And at that point, they have enough of a skeleton that they can start mounting it at the AMNH. One thing that like kind of is weird to think about now, given that you can find a T-Rex almost anywhere due to later discoveries, is that for a long time, the AMNH is the only museum that has one. Like, that is... You have to go to the American Museum of Natural History to see Tyrannosaurus Rex. There is only one mounted skeleton in the world. And for a long time, they had every known specimen. Barnum Brown's crews find a few more, like they find the brain case that Scott mentioned before. They find another brain case with a little bit more material. That's the one that's completely mislabeled by Osborne.
Damn.
But like 5027 is the crown jewel. I would say it's still one of the crown jewels of the AMNH.
Oh my god, yes.
It's one of the most important fossils they have. It is also the subject of one of the earliest monographic descriptions of a dinosaur. There are actually a couple of papers that do a lot of descriptive work on it. One of them from 1916 or 1917 has the base, I just think, the best anatomical illustration ever made. This is, if I could get this blown up on a huge like poster, I would. I've sent it in the Discord for inclusion in the video.
That's lovely.
It is absolutely stunning, the way it's been illustrated.
God, yes.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Right? It is just incredible. You can see here that the stuff that's missing are like a lot of the distal tail vertebrae are not present, and so the caudal nut vertebra count was estimated. It's probably a few less than they illustrated here, which was also referenced in the Jurassic Park novel.
Also, because I did research because I'm a scientist.
Yes, of course.
In 3 seconds, just in case anyone comments and corrects us.
Right.
So that Times article announcing how cool Tyrannosaurus Rex is. That's the prize fighter. That was published in December of 1906, so it would have followed behind the mounting of the cool 1905 sauropod in the media cycle, which appears to have been in circulation a little earlier.
Right. No, I mean, this is right when dinosaur mounts are becoming like
The coolest
widespread. Yeah, and they remain the coolest.
Oh
thing.
yeah, no disagreement.
So 5027 becomes a star. It's the Jurassic Park T-Rex. For a long time, it's the only really good T-Rex. A few other specimens get found in the 20th century. There's one in South Dakota that's very little known. There's one in which I've studied firsthand. It's a pretty good specimen. I'm kind of surprised it's been as like kind of neglected as it has been.
Does that one have a nickname?
It's the Mud Butte T-Rex. It's named after Mud Butte, South Dakota, where it was found.
Charming name.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a Mud Butte T-Rex. It is not in the best state of preparation, let's say. A lot of it's held together with paper mache. So a lot of it...
Wait,
yes,
like
this
actually?
This is the one that started disintegrating in my hand when I picked up one of the vertebrae. I went to the collection manager. I was like, how long has it been since anybody's opened these jackets? And they were like, oh, probably a very long time. And I was just like, you guys may need to take a look at this. They were very happy I was able to let them know, because like very few people even go there to study it.
Huh.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, the South Dakota Mines collection is much more well known for other collections.
Yes.
That's just not a place that theropod specialists normally go. The LA County Museum also finds a really big skull with associated postcrania. LACM, I think it's 23844, which I don't remember the exact year that was found. It's on display in not their main dinosaur hall, but their kind of auxiliary one that focuses more on like dinosaur diversity. It's a cool specimen. It's really big. According to one paper, the individual is probably larger than Sue. Its head is a little bit longer, which is kind of interesting.
Cool.
It's also a very weird skull. One thing tyrannosaurs always have are fused nasal bones. This is probably a strengthening adaptation. The LA County Museum Big Skull has what seems to be unfused nasals, which are either like biologically unfused or perfectly split down the middle during preservation. And there's no possibility that this is an ontogenetic thing because it's enormous. And even the youngest Tyrannosaur specimens we found, like the baby Tarbosaurus, have fused nasals. There's no evidence that that's a thing that's changing ontogenetically. In that group.
It's actually sexual dimorphism.
Oh,
the adult
of
male
course.
tyrannosaurs have a big balloon between their nasals that they inflate and comes out of the top of their head like a blimp.
Yes. Reasonable
like,
and informed speculation.
No. You can see a very, very good reconstruction of this in Monster Hunter with the monster Anjanath. It does that.
It's Anjanath just did that.
It's Anjanath, folks. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm sure it looks like that.
No, like... Actually, Alex, unironically, you just described a thing that a monster that is based on T-Rex actually does in this game.
I'm doing my part.
Anyway, just to finish up the history section really quickly. So the AMNH decides at one point, we've got so many T-Rex skeletons. Let's sell some of them. And they do. In what I think is one of the more baffling decisions that's ever been made, although it's not that baffling given when it happened. The official justification for this is that because of World War II, the AMNH was worried that if the Nazis were to start bombing New York, we could lose the T-Rex holotype. In Spinosaurus ways.
Fashion.
In the manner of Spinosaurus. And so they sold the holotype of T-Rex to the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh. Alex, do you dispute the official story from the AMNH back in the 1940s?
No.
Of course you don't.
But also, I thought of a terrible joke, which was the Axis bombers flying over Pittsburgh at the time would have been like, did we already hit it? Thus preserving.
Yes, they had to camouflage it. That's where I studied it and got concussed. The Dynamosaurus imperiosus holotype was sold to the British Museum of Natural History. I think not during World War II, but I think in the years after. And that's where it remains to this day. I have not seen that specimen in person yet.
I think I saw that. It's on exhibit, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
I'll look through my photos while we continue. I think I saw that.
Viewers, let it be known that I like Pittsburgh. I think it's a good city.
Oh, I love Pittsburgh.
That's great.
I liked it before there was a TV show about it.
The Doy, yeah, of course.
Right. No, I love Pittsburgh. I've always really enjoyed getting to travel there for work. I think it's a great city.
Nestled in the mountains, some cool rivers.
It's got the best approach to a city of any city I've seen. Like when you come out of that tunnel and you're right there.
Coming off of 95 it's like just one of these awful. Not 95. What's the? It doesn't matter. We're not talking about highways. I'm not doing this.
Anyway, so a couple of those important skeletons wind up elsewhere, let's say. For a long time, we don't find more T-Rexes, like really, we don't find substantively more of them. And then starting in around Jurassic Park time, we start to find just a glut of new specimens.
Cool.
1992, the Black Hills Institute collects a skeleton that they call Stan. Stan is a very important specimen because if you've seen T-Rex in a museum, statistically, it's either Stan or AMNH 5027.
It's almost always one of the two.
Right. And the reason for that is that the AMNH licensed most or all of their fossil collection reproduction rights to Research Casting International. So RCI can sell casts of AMNH 5027. They pay like a commission to AMNH. So for a long time, that was an easy specimen that museums could buy if they wanted to display a T-Rex. Stan was historically also one that you could buy a cast of. very easily. Stan is more famous now for being the most expensive dinosaur skeleton ever sold, I think fetching $35 million at auction.
I think that's been beat. I think that I think the
Apex?
Stegosaurus recently beat it. Yeah.
Oh, did Apex beat it?
Apex was like 45 or something like that.
Long story short, T-Rex has become one of the best like represented dinosaurs in museum collections. That is a pretty recent trend. Kind of coincidentally, we start just finding a lot more T-Rex when like in the years after Jurassic Park comes out. The LA County Museum has a bunch of them. It has at least like 4. It's got a growth series on display. It's got a pretty good like what's considered a subadult named Thomas, which is still a pretty large animal.
Do you mean a Nanotyrannus?
What are you talking about? I don't understand that word. We find Sioux, also discovered by the Black Hills Institute, and very famously acquired by the Field Museum. What was then the most expensive dinosaur fossil ever sold at I think $6 million or $8 million.
Between 6 and 8.
Man.
Simpler times.
Which is cute.
Quaint.
It feels very cute now, right?
It feels very affordable.
Yeah, it's like, only $8 million.
Can we pool together and no?
I wish.
Buy Sue from the Field Museum.
What's that with inflation, though?
Let me find out.
When was that purchased?
Not. It would have been in like
1999
or 2002 or something. I want to say 2002. I'll just say year 2000 to be a little
in the
generous.
year 2000.
If I put in the year 200, which I'm sure would have been a very interesting thing.
Inflation it was sold for 2 drachma.
And I'll put in just $7 million to split the difference there.
I mean, we could just ask John Flynn.
It would be about 13
7.6
Okay.
7.6
in 1997.
Oh, in 1997. Okay. Well, let me recalculate. 15 million with inflation adjusted. So Stan is still pretty expensive. Stan's a great specimen, though. I don't know that I understand spending that amount of money on a dinosaur skeleton ever, but sure. With Stan, it's been, I don't want to talk about this at length, but Stan is also a weird case because the Black Hills Institute is actually generally pretty open to researchers wanting to come look at their stuff. If among private fossil collection agencies, they're like, yeah, if you want to come see stuff and do research on it, you're more than welcome to. Usually, there are ethical guidelines about doing that, and SVP, as a general rule, does not really condone research on things that are not held in non-commercial collections. But it's not that BHI itself is unwilling to allow you to look at stuff. And because Stan is so widely available with CAS and CT data sets that were made by BHI as well, there's a lot of research that's based on Stan. And now that Stan we now know Stan is going to the Abu Dhabi museum that is, I think, currently under construction. I don't really know what the protocols will be for accessing the specimen there, but for a while it was feared that Stan was just owned privately by a non-academic agency, and that puts the status of research on Stan into a weird gray zone, where it was effectively openly available because the Black Hills Institute wasn't planning on selling it. They made a lot of money selling CAS, but they were holding it as an asset. The reason that they sold it deals with gets into, I think, legal disputes between the then co-owners of Black Hills, and I don't want to get into that here because I don't know all the details. But it was court ordered that they had to sell it, so that's why it got sold. But it's weird because if you look historically, a lot of literature on T-Rex paleobiology is based on Stan, which is currently not really scientifically accessible in the way that people would like it to be. But that said, if you go to a museum, you're probably going to see a cast of Stan. It's not that much money to buy one of those casts, and BHI is still able to sell the casts, so they will continue appearing. Anyway, that's kind of the interesting history. We're now at over 50 specimens of T-Rex, so it is one of the best represented dinosaurs. And the reason I've gone into a long history section here is that we know quite a lot about T-Rex because everybody researches it. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And I just want to get ahead of the common narrative here for one moment. This is not that paleontologists are hyperfixated on T-Rex. It is that paleontological research, to a large degree, depends on goodwill of funding agencies, news outlets, media companies, and the general public. This is true of pretty much any scientific field, but when you are doing something that is inherently like non-commercial, like paleontology,
Yeah, we don't have a product that we really sell.
right?
No.
You're not going to be able to say, okay, well, we'll patent this and sell it.
Slap it on a plastic lunchbox.
Well, right. Well, we do that. But, we're not doing drug discovery. We're not doing something that's weaponizable. We're not doing like
Despite
research.
what the Jurassic World movies will let you
Despite what the
believe.
Jurassic World movies may tell you. We're not doing something that can be like the nucleus of new tech that might be useful. Like we're not like computer scientists who've been like researching artificial intelligence for a while, and now that's become a boom industry.
Oops.
Right. Ooh, shouldn't have done that. But, they did do it. That is to say, like, we are dependent on government support of research and support of research that we get from the general public, especially through, like, visitors to museums or private donors who like dinosaurs, right? A big part of that is doing research that will be able to generate headlines, be in the media, be in the cultural consciousness, and appeal to people who may be, like, interested in and supportive of paleontology without knowing a lot. So that's reason one to work on T-Rex. Basically, people care because it's T-Rex. It is the most famous dinosaur ever. It has been since it was discovered. It's a cultural icon. Reason two is that we actually have quite a lot of T-Rex skeletons. And so you can do quite a lot of research on them, right? There's a lot of data available that we simply don't have for most theropods. Like, I always recommend to interested students, I hear a lot of young people in paleo say, I really want to do my dissertation on Spinosaurus. And I'm always just like, while that is a valuable group to study, because there's certainly interesting things happening with them, the material isn't there.
You gonna go find some?
Right. Yeah. Please go find one.
Please.
If you want to study dinosaur paleobiology, T-Rex is a very easy thing to work on. And data availability counts for quite a lot, right?
Or rather, I guess it's a very accessible thing to work on.
Yes. No, I don't mean it's easy academically. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Like, it is, the data sets exist or can exist easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a lot of data on T-Rex. And so I think that what we should do is talk a little bit about how T-Rex is depicted in Jurassic Park, because that's probably where every one of us knows it from, and discuss a little bit how that maps with what we know about T-Rex or what we don't know about T-Rex.
I agree.
The first thing I'll say is, just to get it out of the way, the appearance is pretty good. The head is... Dalton, could you take us into a lateral view? Maybe
I can
left
certainly.
lateral view?
Left
I
lateral.
would love to do a left lateral view. Let me find one that's in the sun. I think this
Also,
one
the
might just walk
abundance
into
of
the sun.
T-Rex in the Hell Creek Formation is why there's so many of them in this enclosure, right, Dalton?
That's exactly right. It's
Right.
definitely not because I wanted to produce a couple of basically every skin variant so that we could have
And
that.
there's so many skin variants.
There are a lot of skin variants,
T-Rex.
except you'll notice a conspicuous absence, and I'll leave it. We might discuss that later. Which one is absent and why? But eagle-eyed viewers may have noted already who we're not seeing.
Interesting.
We're definitely not seeing any Nanotyrannus. Is that who we're missing?
What is Nanotyrannus? What are you talking about? You keep saying that. I don't know what you mean.
I'm confused. How do you not know?
What are you talking about?
Does he know?
Does he know?
You
He
mean
doesn't know.
he doesn't know? So, left lateral view here. There's a few notes I would make. The overall shape of the head is actually pretty good. There are two notes. One is that the snout is just proportionally too short. And second is that it feels like the snout is too arched, like dorsally. I could forgive that as being the result of keratin. But T-Rex has pretty
Sorry about that,
flat
gents.
nasals that go forward. But what really exaggerates the shape is that the junction of the snout with like the orbital region and the brain case is not quite right. This thing doesn't really seem to have T-Rex like lacrimal bones. If I put up,
What are we talking about right now?
We're talking about the shape of the head.
What doesn't
I'm
have
gonna
T-Rex
just-
like lacrimal?
The T-Rex, as depicted in Jurassic Park.
Gotcha.
It like the lacrimals of T-Rex kind of bulge. They don't have horns. Most tyrannosaurs have a poorly to well developed horn on the lacrimal. T-Rex does not have that. Tarbosaurus doesn't either. But it does have like a kind of big convex swelling that's probably representing a homologue of that. But you can see like there's really not a kink in the skull. If you look at the skull anterior to the eyes. And in fact, what you'd be seeing is the snout kind of flaring out laterally and thickening dorsally before getting to that region. That is, I think, mainly responsible for the general feeling that the shape is too convex. It is a little bit too arched, but I think keratin could be used to account for that. But it's really that the skull's too short, and we've gotten the shape wrong right in front of the eyes. One thing that's not actually as wrong as people often think is that there's a horn kind of over but behind the eye. And T-Rex actually does have a horn there. Most tyrannosaurs do. This is called the postorbital, cornual process. Cornual process just means a horn, so that's what I'll call it for the rest of the time here. It should be positioned a little bit further back, but the Tufts love T-Rex skull, which is the best preserved T-Rex skull known right now, which I've sent a picture of, so Dalton will be able to splice this into the video as appropriate. Actually does have a pretty well-developed projecting horn there that should just be a little bit more posteriorly positioned. But overall, it's actually pretty good. That's not an unrealistic, or that's not a terrible approximation of it. The back of the skull is also too short. Just generally, the snout isn't long enough, and the back of the skull isn't long enough relative to the eye socket. There's just more bulk that needs to be added. But the only other wrong design detail, so to speak, is this kind of weird smile that goes on at the back of the jaw with everything arching up really strongly going toward the jaw joint. T-Rex's temporal arcade there is just much flatter and more convex ventrally, not concave. Overall, though, this is not a terrible rendition of a T-Rex skull by any means. It was apparently going to be worse at one point.
How do you mean?
Apparently, early in design, they were going to give it great white shark inspired teeth.
Oh, Jesus God!
Well, listen, there's stuff in my
they're
lungs. There's stuff in all of our lungs. Yeah, another fine addition for my collection.
Quoted like an old man.
Yeah.
Well,
General. Oh, yeah. General Grimbus.
I don't listen. I am proud to say I have not watched Revenge of the Sith in at least a decade, so I don't really know what General Grievous says in that.
You could change that this week in theaters only,
Is
or
it
at your
theaters
house
this
if you
week?
want. It's coming back for the anniversary. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's actually the only Star Wars movie I saw in theaters, except for all the new ones, I guess.
Okay, so not.
So it was the only one I saw in theaters. Anyway, I actually don't think I saw Last Jedi in theaters, but it doesn't matter.
That's a shame.
You missed peak.
Yeah. Anyway,
Seriously.
so
Peak.
apparently it was the paleo artist Mike Tursick who also sculpted one of my favorite pieces of dinosaur art ever, which is currently in the collections at the Indianapolis Children's Museum. Alex and I saw it in the collections there. A beautiful running Displetosaurus sculpture that I will also send.
Show it to me, Rachel.
Now, Mike Tursick passed away a few years ago, so he won't be making any more fine art like this. But I am now going to send it in chat so that we can put it in the video. It is simply stunning. And he apparently intervened in production and just said T-Rex's teeth did not look like a great white shark's teeth, and kind of
that
forced the
piece
design to change. Yeah,
Beautiful.
Oh my God! Yes,
just absolutely amazing stuff.
Well, thank you, Mike, for making sure they did the teeth. They did the teeth good.
Yes, they did. Now, as for the rest of the body, I think it's actually all pretty good. The arms are, funny enough, perhaps a little too long. And in the game, they've got the Bigfoot disease, which the movie design has a little bit too. I think that's a little bit a concession for the animatronic, which I probably just had to have larger feet for stability.
No.
The animatronic didn't have feet.
No, there was an animatronic of the legs.
Well, I don't think it bore weight though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
no,
just
I
like
guess
a
you're
leg
right.
on a
that
stick.
wouldn't be a consideration. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know then, but it does have large feet. Maybe that was an error.
He's
I don't
wrong.
know.
Everyone, dogpile him.
All right.
Dogpile him.
Yeah, dogpile. Go get me. So I think generally, I don't have a tremendous number of complaints on the design. There are some quibbles, like that row of osteoderms or like big hornlets that are like kind of tracing the upper part of the antorbital fenestra.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
T-Rex's bone is really smooth in that area. Like, there's kind of just a general gradation from the antorbital fossa, like onto the subcutaneous bone. I think it's pretty unlikely that there were very large scales specifically there. There are other parts of the skeleton or of the facial skeleton where we have like pretty good evidence of really large scales or like big osteoderms or feature scales, I guess. One of those is right on the postorbital, like for the postorbital horn. But there's like large rugose areas on the maxilla that are probably supporting like more elaborate scalation than the rest of it. So that's probably not a real thing, but it doesn't really matter. The nasals are really heavily ornamented, so almost certainly we're gonna like hold really large like keratinous growths, which is done a little bit in Jurassic Park, but is like more exaggerated in Prehistoric Planet.
And I mean, we see that in other tyrannosaurs.
In the nasal, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, all tyrannosaurs do that, but like this is a good example, I think, of being that nasal look like a little bit more keratiny and ornamented. And that's taken to the biggest extreme in Alioramus, where you actually
That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Where you get... I eventually figured out what you were going for. Where you get like very, very large hornlets that are arranged like one after another in the midline. It's a cool critter, that Alioramus.
Yeah, it really is. Now, okay, speaking of like the maxilla and stuff around there, what about lips?
Oh, maybe. I don't know what you're talking about.
What are lips?
Yeah, I've never heard of these lips. I think dinosaurs had lips. I'm not really I don't want to fight about it, and I don't get why people are, but it's the ancestral condition for amniotes, clearly, and I don't think there's any compelling reason. I think this is rather a place where the extant phylogenetic failure, or extant phylogenetic failure.
Freudian slip.
Hi there, Dr. Freud. How's it going?
God. The extant phylogenetic bracket fails us because we have a derived condition that is separate, but in both living relatives that we'd use to bracket it. Like, birds don't have lips, but that's because birds have beaks.
Mm-hmm.
And crocs don't have lips, but they don't have beaks. So we don't really know what the ancestral archosaur or especially a dinosaur would be expected to have. I suspect there were lips. There's been a recent paper arguing for that. This is something that for some reason paleontologists love to fight about, and there is no reason for it because it really doesn't matter.
It's like much. It's a paleontologist red flag in my opinion. How strong are someone's opinions about dinosaur lips? Is like if you're a lady dating, it's like does a man have strong opinions about like women in Star Wars movies? Get out.
We would need to know if it had lips to do the most accurate rendition of this dinosaur possible. However, we don't need to do that. It's okay for us all to interpret it in the way we'd like. Obviously, I like scientific accuracy, but as we've said, I don't think we can really, in good faith, call something more accurate or less accurate if we're operating in the area where we don't know. And we don't really. We would need like a mummy with facial integument to know for sure, and we're probably not going to get that. It would be great.
It'd
if
be
we
very
did.
cool, and then it would
heard...
enter into the realm of like scientific relevance because we had to have a data point.
Right.
What I've heard before, I completely forget who said this, but it was someone I believe at Michigan once told me that. Just very flippantly said, like, Scott, the second you put literally any sort of soft tissue onto a skeletal, it's inaccurate. It has to be.
Right. And that's fine. Because
Smartest man in Michigan.
you know
right
what? Good paleo art engages with the science, makes reasonable, informed decisions, and most importantly, looks good.
And most importantly, we like it. That's how you know it's good.
Right. Right. It's good paleo art if we like it.
and we mean we.
Yeah. If you see a piece of art, think, would the skeleton crew enjoy this?
And if you're curious about that, watch what I'm pretty sure will be the video that comes out right before this of our Q&A, where we talk for like 2 hours about our favorite paleo art.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, something.
You say that as if you have to edit it.
No. Something just got sprayed by a skunk outside of the window of the lab.
Oh, that's really funny because a skunk just sprayed out here too.
Are you kidding? Is there
Like,
like a chemical
we've got,
leak happening? Maybe.
There's like a resident skunk. It's been a couple of nights that there's been some skunkening happening in the backyard.
Oh
Wait,
my
but
God.
this is
There's skunkening.
this. Is there like a fire? Maybe because that can't possibly just have happened.
Well, mine was like, I don't know, 5-ish minutes
Okay.
ago.
Okay. Maybe.
All
It's
right.
not like this.
Now, speaking toward the public perception of dinosaurs a little bit, though, I think it is important to note that I'm going to break with the rest of the skeleton crew here for a moment.
Oh.
I know. I actually think it is good when movies don't intentionally convey misinformation.
Yeah.
And I say this for a few reasons. One, I don't care that much when it's dinosaurs, but I think occasionally we talk out of two sides of our mouths about this, where we say, like, you know, on the one hand, it doesn't matter because it's not a documentary, so people won't learn from, like, people aren't in thinking that this is accurate and therefore won't learn from it. But then we also talk about things like that are important, like we want better representation of what scientists look like in movies. We don't want all of our scientists to be like old white men because that'll make people think that all scientists are old white men. And I agree with it a little bit. Like if every scientist in media is a white guy and like every paleontologist is a white guy with a beard, the perception and like, you know, and many people who are like, I'm a white guy with a beard. So this is I was once a white guy without a beard. I was a child once.
I wasn't.
Yeah, I know you were born with that. Except
was.
we have photographic evidence that it's been gone at least
I
once.
don't.
Oh, post
No,
that.
we haven't. Can we have that with the sound effects?
There's videographic evidence that I once didn't have a beard.
That's true. And it was very funny.
It
So-
certainly was.
Here's what I'll say relevant to this point. Like, we know, and I've heard many of my colleagues who are not like white guys with beards say, yeah, seeing like every person in media in this field not looking like me made me feel like that was something I couldn't be. And I think we know from that people do like learn from media even when they know it's not a documentary that's supposed to actually teach them how the world is. I think for a more practical and like kind of overblown version of this, which is why I didn't want to lead with it, I wanted to lead with something that's more real. Or not more real, but less like comical. And it's not comical in a haha funny way, it's comical in a sad way. Many people have died because people have witnessed a car accident and seen a car like overturn. And instead of trying to help the people in the car, assume that the car is about to explode and retreat to a safe distance and wait for like an ambulance to arrive or something.
Yes.
This happens like routinely. People have died because in movies, every time a car flips over, it explodes right afterward.
Or like also specifically car fires,
Right.
where it is very important to get the person out of there as soon as possible because of the fire.
Because of the car fire?
Because of the car fire. But like, I mean, hell, in like name a shooter, they're basically explosive barrels.
Right. And we learn from media a little bit. And that's not to say that I think that fictional franchises should be held to the standard of a documentary in terms of like conveying the truth, because I think that that's ridiculous. Like, you have to allow a movie to happen at some point. But rather, I want to talk about something that I've heard many people parrot because they think it's real, when it's not, which is that T-Rex couldn't see you if you don't.
Ooh, incredible transition.
Right.
Yes.
I remember realizing as a teenager that this was something that had entered the consciousness because I watched a YouTube video by a Battlefield 3 YouTuber, because I was very into Battlefield 3, who was joking
Amen.
about how people played the game poorly. And he said, remember, tanks have T-Rex vision. So if you see a tank coming at you, just get down on the ground and don't move because it won't notice you.
That's so
then
funny.
like
That's
followed
so
immediately by a
funny.
clip of a guy doing this and then being blown up by the tank. It was very funny.
I think I've seen that video.
You probably have. Tanks have T-Rex vision. Also, the rest of the skeleton crew may disagree with me on the prior point that I just made, but I'm giving them no space to do so in this video. So if they disagree, we simply won't be hearing about it right now. But it also it doesn't really matter so much. It's more of a segue. The idea that T-Rex has motion sensitive vision is, I think, a corruption of like one fact about animals and how the visual system works, and a misrepresentation of what Michael Crichton wrote in the Jurassic Park novel.
A bit, yeah.
Because the phrase is T-Rex's visual acuity was based on movement.
But
Dalton, please.
Well, Scott,
I think Dalton and I are, I think, going to make the exact same.
Scott,
point.
you can go for it. You were starting to.
So this is actually because I reread Jurassic Park like a couple of years ago. So it's been a minute. It's still been a minute, but it's much more recently than when I read it when I was a child. But there are several animals in the book that have the vision-based. The movement-based vision,
right?
And it really is established with, I believe it's a Hadrosaurus or Maiasaura.
The Maiasaura, right?
Yeah, it's the Maiasaura when they're basically like right in front of it, and when they stop moving, it just completely seems to forget that they exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which it is a little bit of a retcon in actually the second book. But that they talk about this?
Yes, they do.
What? Where all of a sudden it doesn't work like that anymore?
Yes,
right.
Because which honestly, I did think that of all things, it's a very good way to retcon the T-Rex, like the movie perception that the T-Rex was the only thing that had the movement based vision. Because in the novel, I think that they also say that that's an explicit part of the amphibian DNA.
Yes,
influence.
It is only the dinosaurs with frog DNA that have this visual defect.
Yes.
And Grant is surprised that it happens. And he's like confused when the T-Rex is attacking him and he freezes because he's frozen because he's terrified. And then it's like, oh, it didn't attack me. Weird. And then it happens again. It's like, oh, it's the frog DNA. And and if you haven't read the book and you've only seen the movie, you might be like, well, don't they all have frog DNA? No. In the book, there are mini graphs and mini printouts of computer screens. It's a great part of the book.
I love it.
But in those printouts, you see that it shows you for each dinosaur species what living species they use to fill in the gaps in the genome. It doesn't justify this. I assume it's just kind of like, this just was the best fit. It's just what they did.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them have frog DNA. Some of them have like birds. Some have lizard. There's maybe a few other things. I don't remember. But
I think they reference at least one lizard.
I think so.
Yeah. Sorry, it doesn't really matter.
But only the dinosaur in the book, only the dinosaurs with the frog DNA are the ones that present this visual defect. And it's also only the ones with frog DNA that can breed.
Yes.
And, I'm sympathetic to the filmmakers, right? Because Grant staring down the T-Rex and not getting killed is a pretty important part of that sequence that obviously has to get adapted.
Right.
Then you either have to decide, do we explain in the movie in either like cumbersome exposition or dialogue or something that, the T-Rex didn't see me because it can't see you if you don't move, but that's because of the frog DNA? Or do they just build the credibility of their paleontologist character by saying this is something a paleontologist would know and it's just a thing about T-Rex? Mm-hmm. And I don't blame them for doing that.
No. No, neither do I. It's a critical part of the story. Sorry,
but it's
Dalton,
wrong.
Please.
No, go on, please.
Please finish.
That's wrong. But I am finished.
Okay.
And then the retcon in the second book that I honestly, I really love the retcon, but again, it is only for the movie perception that T-Rex was the one that's vision was based on movement. If memory serves, this is how it works in the book, is that because in the book they're not stealing full adult animals. They're trying to steal eggs because they're like, hey, getting a full adult T-Rex onto a ship is going to be kind of a nightmare. An egg's way easier.
A much better idea than they had at any point in any of the films.
Yes. And that's also when the T-Rex chicks in the book have fluff on them. They have feathers, which is another fun little
me, right. I totally forgot that.
nod. Yeah, they do.
It's a one-line thing, and it's such a great little detail.
It's such a good little detail. But then like the group of the bad guy group get caught raiding the T-Rex nest by one of the adults, and the head guy just goes, I think it's Dodgson, who goes like freeze, it can't see you if you don't move. And the good guy, the protagonists are watching this, and they're like, what are they doing? And
why aren't they running away?
Yeah. They're like, what are they doing?
No, I think it was the paleontologist character, wasn't it? Because they have like a crappy paleontologist.
I forget specifically, but I really like the exchange that they have is that like the T-Rex is just like the T-Rex does kind of freeze and just kind of stare at them and seem to like be looking for them or something for a second, and then it just knocks one of them down immediately and like rips him in half or something, and then everyone bolts.
Right.
And then they have like the conversation when the protagonists are watching them that's just like, why did they do that? And I believe one of the lines was like, they were misinformed, and then it's just like, why would they think that? And then it's like, well, that is what happened in the on Isla Nublar. And then there was like, why would a T-Rex do that? And the explanation that was given was, did it just eat? Maybe it wasn't hungry. And it's like, oh,
right,
yeah.
It's very funny, but
I love that so much. It's darkly comedic for a silly part of a dinosaur.
I have never read a book that has more clearly been written by somebody who hates the entire book they're writing than The Lost World by Michael Crichton.
Yeah, and it makes it not a good book.
I kind of have a lot of like a really big soft spot for it just because of how much like latent aggression there is toward Jurassic Park.
It's like it's like that Megamind meme. It's like, oh, and the dinosaurs you like, they're all gonna die from a stupid contingency.
Right. They all have a prion disease, you piece of shit.
And they're all horrible murder monsters.
And you have it too, because you got bitten by the compies.
Oh, right.
And we're not going to address if that's going to have implications for you later.
I love that book.
I know.
But
I need to reread it.
I love the hatred. I
don't hate it.
I love the anger.
It is fun.
I enjoy the book, but
no, I don't hate it, but it's got good sequences.
It does.
Which are the ones that got translated into the movie.
You mean the one sequence?
Yes. I mean, one sequence.
Yeah.
No, the Carnotaurus
the
sequence is
Carnotaurus
also very good.
exactly.
That's a shame that
I wish it
not,
made it into the movie.
But
Yeah.
I mean,
T-Rex.
if while we're on this stunlock, I remember the Carnotaurus sequence when I reread it being a bit anticlimactic. That it's just kind of like they're looking around, they're just like, huh, that was a weird thing with the flashlight. What's going on here? And then they just did it a bunch, and then they revealed dinosaurs that just left because they got seen.
It's not,
but
the most action-packed. But
I like it biologically. Like, it's a fun little thing of like, yeah, they're ambush predators, so they know if you see them, they're just going to leave.
Yeah, which is just
right.
how ambush predators work. It's the reason why, like, it's the reason why there's that, like in India, it was like wearing like eyes on the back of your head sort of thing so tigers would think that you were looking at them.
Yeah, no, I kind of actually like that. I think it's I like that it's an anticlimactic sequence, because it's anticlimactic in a fun Michael Crichton way where
you're learning something.
There's science involved. Right, you're learning something. And this sequence about how you learn things from media, maybe. So the T-Rex eye thing, like what I wanted to say, and I've forgotten a lot of the canon details here, so I appreciate Dalton and Scott for bringing them up. Like the phrase "the visual acuity is based on movement" doesn't really mean you can only see something that is moving. It is that all vertebrates, to my knowledge, perhaps all eyed animals, perhaps cephalopods also do this. Your visual senses are most attuned to when you see something move.
It's a way that whenever you are out in the wild looking for wildlife, it's one of the recommended ways of how to see where a pretty well hidden animal is kind of let your eyes unfocus and look in one specific place, and you will just key on the movement.
Right. And like that's also how, if there's a bug running by, like if I were in my apartment in North Carolina and cockroaches the size of freight train cars were like kind of scurrying by me all the time. Like that's how you'd see one, right? Like you'd see something moving out of the corner of your eye. So I'm sure T-Rex's visual acuity was based on movement. It was a vertebrate. It probably was most attuned to things that move. The whole "it can't see you if you don't move" thing is not right.
No.
First of all, like an animal can move its head, which will make the image appear to move relative to it. So it's not like you become literally invisible if you are not in motion.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like Dalton said, this is something that's being like borrowed and translated down from the novel, where there's like a good reason that these animals have this visual defect, or an in-universe reason for it at least. T-Rex had pretty good eyesight from all we can tell. It's got a very large eye socket. Its brain seems to have fairly well-developed areas for processing visual information.
How do we know that?
We can look at the brain. You could cut it open with a diamond saw and make a latex mold of it. Or if you're in the modern day, you could CT scan it and build it digitally, which is less fun, but probably the better thing.
And I think when James says we can study the brain, what he's referring to is that the bones form around the brain. That's what we call a brain case. And we can infer shape and relative size of some of the regions to a degree of confidence based on that empty space in between those bones.
Exactly.
And that empty space is called an endocast.
So the brain endocast for T-Rex more generally indicates a pretty unspecial but not bad intellectual capability.
That's what was said on one of my report cards.
So by what I just said, that sounds incredibly disparaging toward T-Rex. What I mean is it has a fairly large brain relative to its body size, but that's by like normal reptilian standards. It's pretty croc-like, and that's not a bad thing because crocs are a lot more intelligent than we normally think. I would imagine if pressed, I would imagine T-Rex perhaps being a little bit less instinctual than crocs are, because I think the instinctual behavior is why we think of crocs as dumb. It's not that they actually lack like processing capability. They're very trainable and can actually form like, pretty good social relationships with people. I'm always surprised at seeing like people keeping them as pets, where the like crocs will go for, by which I mean mostly gators, really. Like they go for scratches. Like they seem to understand how to behave around people. But they're very instinctual in that, like, if they're confused about something, they'll just bite it, right? A lot of that is because of their special sense organs that they have on their face, which, God, their name is escaping me. Alex, do you remember the croc sense organs?
Like the pit sensors?
Yeah, the pit sensors.
My brain is telling me the ampullae of Lorenzini, but I think that's just sharks.
Those are crocs, or sharks, rather.
Oh, no, I don't remember.
Oh.
How embarrassing.
Integumentary sense organs?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, ISOs.
Yes, yeah, the integumentary sense organs. They seem to have a really, really robust sensory system dedicated to like getting any tactile information that they then bite at. This is part of how they hunt. There's good reason to think tyrannosaurs would not be like that, and that's not me trying to be like T-Rex was smarter. Like it probably T-Rex you could mostly think of its behavioral capacity as being like a croc. So this is not going to do like bird tier smartness activities. Some dromaeosaurs and troodontids may have been getting close to some birds. I don't think any of them are going to be like corvids. But, birds are generally more intelligent than we give them credit for being.
Now, James, I remember hearing in the news cycle some time ago about possible primate levels of intelligence in tyrannosaurs.
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I know what you're talking about. That was based on some interesting extrapolation work that I think ignores quite a lot of details about how brains work.
Okay.
T-Rex probably did not have culture. As cool as the paleo art of T-Rex like using a large log to tip over an ankylosaur was,
That is pretty cool.
like, let me be clear, that's a pretty cool piece of art. I don't think they were actually doing this. So
They call this tank
there's
tipping.
been a lot of... That's what they call it. And every teenage T-Rex like to do it.
Crocs use tools.
They do, but not like a lever.
No.
They're like, if I put stick on nose, bird might try to get stick.
It is also so funny that every single image of what is it, the mugger croc that does
Gators do that too.
Gators do it too.
Yeah.
Every image I see of that just looks like it's like, oh, it's for camouflage. It looks like a pigeon's attempt at a nest.
Right, it's like
Camouflage.
One stick.
It's like, hey, look at it.
Right. I mean, I thought it was. It's interpreted as being bait, right? Because it's like when birds are building their nests, they'll go for the sticks.
I've heard both bait and camouflage.
I'm gonna give gators the benefit of the doubt and say bait.
If it's camouflage, it's very funny.
If it's camouflage, perhaps okay but unimpressive intellectual capabilities. Good description.
Well,
They
have you
already look like
considered
logs.
it's a joke?
Oh, they're doing a bit.
It's a joke.
It's extreme intelligence because they understand humor and are doing
Right.
bits.
This is like Gator Curb Your Enthusiasm.
No.
They
Actually,
like come out with their camouflage and you hear the curb theme.
No. It's like the orcas that wore the salmons on their heads. It's fashion.
That's
Wait.
funny though.
Scott, I'm going to need
That's
you to
very
explain
funny.
that.
Oh, okay. Very, 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 very short
Okay.
little thing. That basically a while ago there was a couple individual orcas, I believe, off the coast of Alaska that were shown carrying dead salmon on their heads for extended periods of time. And this started with like one or two orcas, and then a larger group of them all did it. And then after a while, they just all stopped. And basically, the explanation is it was a fashion trend.
It was
That's
a
so
fad.
cool.
It was a fad.
It's
It was a
amazing.
fad. It was that one of them did it and thought it was funny or entertaining or something like that. Whatever you want, whatever adjective you want to put there. And then the rest of them were like, I want to do that too. And eventually too many of them did it. And they're like, it's not fun anymore. And then they stopped. And apparently it's coming back. Another
Yeah.
one was seen.
Oh, thank God, it's
Recently.
back in
The season
fashion.
Tycoon.
There is, perhaps unsurprisingly, there is a Wikipedia page for this phenomenon, and the page is just called Salmon Hat.
Yes, salmon hat.
It was first observed in 1987, and then it's been observed in 2024 once again in Puget Sound.
That's so cool.
That is the coolest thing.
I feel bad that
Um,
we're blasting their eardrums all the time.
yeah, we've just put a huge number of things that look like them but much larger in the ocean that are screaming constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is probably why they've started attacking our boats again, right? Because for a long time, I think it was also kind of observed, like, orca attacks on human boats were actually pretty rare.
Yeah.
I've heard it
aren't
described
the-
as, like, they seem to have an understanding.
Well, if memory serves, to continue the orca stunlock.
We're on the orca stun.
The Tyrannosaurus Rex of the sea.
If memory serves, the whole orcas attacking ships thing has been attributed to one individual and like the couple other orcas that have been around her.
It's the Patrick Bateman of
It's
orcas.
Pyacon.
The Payacon.
But the Patricia Bateman, because I'm pretty sure it's a female orca. But yeah.
Yeah. No, well, I remember seeing a very cool video on YouTube where like a seal jumped
By the
onto...
Skeleton Cruise. Like and subscribe.
Right. Well, a seal jumped onto this couple's boat, I think in the Puget
Oh
Sound,
yeah.
trying to escape like a bunch of orcas, and you just see the orcas looming under the water right next to the boat, staring at the people. Like, it just feels like they're yelling, "You are harboring a fugitive from the Orca Kingdom.
Yeah.
Please deport him back to the water." And they're just like looking, and they're like surfacing near the boat and like threateningly, but they refuse to touch it. It's like, it's very weird. It's like they just know, like, don't mess with people. You can like scare them, but you should not try to hurt them.
We don't have jurisdiction here.
We do not have jurisdiction above the water.
Yet.
I think I've seen one or two videos like this, and at least one of them ended with the woman pushing the seal off the boat and getting out of there because she did get scared.
I mean,
Which, with the seal looking at her like, what the
No!
I think seals are adorable, but I also think I might be terrified in that situation.
It depends how big is
I
the
would
boat.
have to.
It
does
was
depend
not
on
that
how
big.
the boat is. If you're like in a
If,
kayak,
you're in a,
like
if it's a
some
kayak,
you're
I'm
like-
sorry. That's a mere you situation.
But like, I would just have to mentally be like, there are no recorded attacks of a wild orca on a human being. Just like that's my mantra until I'm on land.
Right. It was just so funny to see the seal's look of betrayal, and I think you can kind of see the orcas going after it afterward. I don't think the seal made it, but you know, many seals don't. Many
I
such
trusted
cases.
you.
I trusted you, and you betrayed me. Anyway, okay. But I bring up the sensory tactile stuff for a reason, which is that you've probably seen a lot of chatter about tyrannosaurs in general having like crocodile-like facial sensory systems. This is there's a 2017 paper describing Displetosaurus horneri, which is called "A New Tyrannosaur with Evidence of Anagenesis in a Crocodile-like Facial Sensory System." I would retitle that
Wrong
paper
again.
to "A New Tyrannosaur." And just leave it at that. But anyway, this is not a Tyrannosaurus specific thing, though. There's been a lot of theropod research on like the facial nerve canals within the maxilla. It's not just T-Rex. I think Australovenator also had a paper
so.
about this, and Neovenator.
Aerostean, one of the ones with skull. With
It's
the skull.
Australovenator, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Neovenator also had something like this. So there's been a lot of chatter of like, are theropod dinosaurs showing evidence of crocodile-like facial sensation, which would mean that these integmentary sensory organs would be present maybe more broadly in Archosauria. And if that's true, I would say the idea that these things were highly like reactive to facial touch would probably be valid. Maybe you could imagine them as big, like, gators. Unfortunately, recent research on this has cast doubt on the idea. And what this paper showed, and I actually have it up, so let me... there's a paper by Florian Boabdella, Emily Lessner, and Julian Benoit, which is called The Rostral Neurovascular System of Tyrannosaurus Rex. What they basically find in a nutshell, and I might be oversimplifying the results of their study a little bit, is that T-Rex's facial sensory system is not that abnormal for a reptile. It's just like normal, kind of a normal degree of development of facial sensation and neurovascular canals, not comparable to crocodilians. There's no evidence here that there's like abnormal development.
Well, it is comparable to early terrestrial crocodilians.
Well, right, and I think that the interesting argument there, and what always kind of led me to feel that there was something wrong with this hypothesis, is like this is something that makes sense if you're a water-based ambush predator, because you're sensing like you can sense movement in water to a remarkable degree of specificity. I've met the woman who discovered these ISOs in crocs. I was invited to speak at a conference on evolutionary neuroscience of all things a few years ago. I say of all things because I'm not an evolutionary neuroscientist. I was invited because the conference was specifically doing a special session about exaptation, which I have strong feelings about. And due to hearing about it through the grapevine, they were just like, "Hey, do you want to come and give the counter perspective talk that exaptation is a bad idea in evolutionary biology?" And I was like, "I'd be happy to." But this was partially organized by Daphne Suarez, who I think as a PhD student discovered these ISOs and documented some aspects of their function. And I want to read the paper because it is insane.
Go off, King.
Well, like it's just a remarkable. It's a remarkable degree of specificity. Oh, I'm sorry. So ISO is, I think, what they're called more now. The original paper called them dome sensory organs.
Oh, yes.
which is the term I think I was looking for before.
No, that makes sense because they are on the dome. So
Right, you put them right on the dome. Well, they kind of have a dome-like profile. And when you look at crocs, and this is the other reason I think we shouldn't have really interpreted these as being present in theropods. If you look at a gator up close, you will see like a billion little black pits.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the dome sensory organs. There are not nearly enough foramina on tyrannosaur facial bones for that density of coverage, right?
Yeah.
Or any theropod that I've ever seen. It just isn't present. Right, or I'm sorry, not dome sense organs, dome pressure receptors. So Daphne Suarez did some experimental work with these, and she, I think, found that they could detect a single drop of water hitting the surface of the water where they were,
good
Cool.
lord.
and like localize it perfectly, right? And this presumably works. Like, I don't know if we even know like how these are wired, but I would assume that it's something where it's like it's like a phase contrast between all of these dome pressure receptors. So any disturbance propagating through the water will be recorded immediately by like hundreds of these. And that information is then integrated to tell them exactly where this is relative to their own head. Which is really, really cool. They also tend to lunge right at the disturbance. Yeah, it was a water droplet, which is just insane. Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's a very short paper. It was a Nature paper from 2002. Daphne Suarez is very cool, and this is like an amazing discovery. There's not any evidence that theropods had something similar, and this is clearly something that can only really work in the water, where you can propagate like a really, really dense like pressure, like the density of air does not provide nearly enough information to do this. So
No.
This is not like people have speculated, oh, maybe they're like their faces are really sensitive for like courtship behavior. You don't need abnormal sensitivity to like rubbing your snout on your partner Tyrannosaurus snout. I'm sure.
Don't they also?
It's fine if they did that. They might have.
Don't they also bite the shit out of each other?
They bite the out of each other. Thank you for making the connection for me, Alex. Really cool paper on this. Didn't focus on T-Rex, so I won't go into it too much here. We might have also already talked about it. But this was one of my favorite papers that ever came out. I think Amelia got to see me read this when we were both PhD students and see the very rare thing where I read a paper and liked it and was like, this is really good research. A phrase I wish I could say more about work coming out in the field we work in.
We immediately went to the fourth floor to check. Well, we went to the prep lab to check the cast 5027.
Right.
And then didn't believe it and went to the fourth floor.
Yeah, it was so cool. So Tyrannosaur facial skeletons are absolutely covered in bite marks all the time. When we read the paper, I think we initially thought they were saying they were only ever on the front of the snout. Reading more carefully, they talk a lot more about things that are like more posterior on the skull. And I have seen some gnarly pathologies in like the infratemporal fossa area. One thing I see pretty commonly in tyrannosaurs is like pathological absorption of bone on the back of the jugul's postorbital process. Like big punctures and gnarly stuff going on there. Sides of the jugul's often get injuries. Postorbitals. So I think that was something that like I didn't really understand when I first read the paper. That said, though, a lot of the injuries are on the snout. I would say probably most of them, which makes sense. If they're biting at each other, they're probably going to hit the part that's in front. The speculation in this paper is that this is probably intraspecific behavior, like rather than something that's happening because of predation. There's two good reasons to think this. One, what the hell else would be doing this to them? Right? What larger theropod are you imagining in the environment that can that is predating upon tyrannosaurs of fairly large size? The other good reason to think this is, and this is amazing, roughly half of tyrannosaur specimens have this, but specifically roughly half of tyrannosaur specimens over about 50% of their maximum body size, which is where we've inferred that these animals hit sexual maturity. So around the time they hit sexual maturity, they start half of them start displaying a litany of bite wounds all over their face.
That's pretty cool.
That's cool.
It is presumed that this may be a courtship thing. I think there is no reason to think that's not the case.
Yeah.
If this is a courtship thing and half of them have it, the presumption is probably then that this is reflecting sexually dimorphic behavior, and that what we're seeing is male-to-male contests for right to mate. Now, it could be
Very
the
good.
opposite. There are animal species where females, like there are dominant females that fight for the right to
Well,
mate.
and could it also be males biting females, like courtship biting?
It could be. That's actually another possibility. Right. Very interesting. So we don't really know what this is yet. I think the paper comes down more on the idea of it's like a display thing, either for like
It makes sense.
for right to mate. Courtship biting is an interesting idea that I hadn't thought about before.
Is there a difference, if you have the paper open, is there a difference between the ones that have them on the face and the ones that have them in the back of the skull? Like, do you see both injuries on an individual
Yeah.
animal?
Yeah, all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say, like, that would be a mating thing. That would be interesting if some of them have them on the face and others have them on the back. That would be a difference.
Yeah.
But
No,
if they all have all of them, then
it is mostly. So I would say it is more common to see them on the snout, but if they're on the back of the skull, they're also generally present on the snout.
Damn, that is cool.
It is one of the like coolest papers I've read in a long time. Yeah, you just get like you get a lot of injuries on the postorbital bar and the jugal, and you get some like toward the top of the face too.
Huh.
There's one really gnarly specimen that I'm aware of an incredibly awful pathology on. That's not published yet, so I'm not going to say more about it. But friend of the channel, Hank Sharp, did do an amazing illustration of the incident that would have caused that, which I think we could put up now because that's public. I'll try to find it later. I don't think I can find it that easily right now. But it's just a really, really cool illustration of two tyrannosaurs in combat with each other. The details of the pathology, though, I won't go into. Anecdotally, I would say that my observation is definitely that this holds. Roughly half of these things have bite marks. Curiously, what Amelia and I did not believe is that AMNH 5027 does not have any bite marks.
it's got one.
Or it has one, right? But it's mostly unmarked, right? And I've seen Rexes that are covered in bite marks, including the holotype. So there's
5027's a girl.
it was a girl, Nickel. He sucked so much at intraspecific combat, nobody even bit him.
Yeah. Or he was the best at it.
Right. Yeah, we can't rule out the possibility that he was just undefeated in single combat. I mean, it's also we also don't know that this was not a female-dominated mating system. It's much
Like
less
walking
common.
with dinosaurs.
Well, I mean, not exactly, but like there are like talking about breeding systems, right? Polygamy is a neutral term where it just means that there is like a many-to-one mating dynamic.
Like the Mormons.
Right. Now in the Mormons, they feature the typical mammalian mating system. Most mammals, if they do polygamy, specifically have polygyny or polygyny, which sounds I usually try.
Polygyny sounds so much better than the first one.
Polygyny, but it's the same root as gynecology. Polygyny is many females to one male. Polyandry is the opposite, where you could have a situation, and you do have this in some animals, where like there were dominant female tyrannosaurs that would battle each other for the right to mate, and then would like iteratively mate with other males within their like social circle. Either one of these is possible. I'm trying to remember. I'm just Googling really quickly because I don't remember too much which animals have polyandrous behavior. I think there are a number of birds that do it.
That sounds right.
But like this is like a queen bee kind of situation. Like that's clearly not a good model.
For a vertebrate.
But right.
Have you considered the Troodon?
Troodon?
Are you talking about the one from
Yes.
the Jurassic Park game?
I'm saying like
Oh,
you
right,
social or
right.
something.
Well, they make them like
Okay.
parasitoid.
I had not read the.
Oh.
I have not played the game. I'm sorry.
I know we all know a really, really, really good example of this, or a lot of examples of this, like bees and termites and ants and
Bonobos.
stuff like that.
Are bonobos female dominated?
Not eusocial.
Bonobos, well, I mean, they kind of are, but they're more just poly.
Aren't naked mole rats?
Oh,
some
yeah,
kind of
right.
Weird eusocial
Yeah, there's something like that. Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, but I mean, there are like, what? Never mind. All right, I've gotten to the part in the Wikipedia article where it says, according to Gordon G. Gallup, as a form of adapting to multiple mating in females, human penile shape is indicative of an evolutionary history of polyandry.
What?
Okay.
Yes. It's been suggested that polyandrous behavior originates basically when there is a tremendous advantage to offspring fitness where there are multiple males collaborating with, like, protecting the young
Okay.
and raising them. This is mostly happens in eusocial things like bees and naked mole rats where there's like a colony queen. But specifically Jacania birds, like these weird
Yes.
water birds with the big feet, also do this, and it seems that the males will like kind of band together to protect
cool.
their young. But the females also wind up specifically laying their eggs in the territory of the different males that they have bred with as like a paternity assurance thing.
Oh.
So like they will breed with a few males who will be
Reliable.
who will well they'll breed with a few of them that they choose, and then they'll like intentionally lay eggs in the territory that is
Gotcha.
near all of them, so that the males are like, oh, okay, those are my kids.
Those are the ones that like tuck the young up under their
I think
wings in
so.
like that cool way, right?
Oh,
I
like the
believe
funny
so.
pictures.
I don't know if it's the same species as that picture that's often spread, but yeah, it's that genus or group.
Cool.
Listen, gun to my head, I would probably say it's much more common for males to be fighting
Yeah.
for the right to mate than for females to be doing it. But we don't really know. I would say I feel safe saying that face-bitten tyrannosaurs. I don't know if I feel safe, but I feel willing to speculate that face-bitten tyrannosaurs are presumed males.
Yeah.
If, like, again, gun to my head, that's what I would guess. But we don't know that scientifically. I just want to make that point. Like, I would not say, oh, I found a T-Rex and it's got face bites, so we know it's a boy T-Rex. But it's a useful starting point of other research to see if there is any sexual dimorphism. Like, if other traits are dimorphic between bitten or non-bitten.
Mhm.
It's there's might be something.
You heard it here first, folks. Any bite marks, it's a male.
It's
Skeleton
it's a
crew.
boy.
That's a skeleton crew promise.
Anyway, one of the coolest studies on tyrannosaurs recently also makes an interesting point that you stop seeing craniofacial bites in theropods. Basically, I think at Paraves, or maybe maybe a little bit before in Coelurosaurs, which also coincides with when you get pinnaceous feathers for display.
Oh.
So I mean, making the interesting point there that perhaps what we're seeing is a changeover in the main mate display mode, where we're moving from like physical combat to display with these large feathers.
They've evolved beyond that.
Right. Well, what's true is, like, aside from one particular velociraptor that may have been executed Mortal Kombat style by another one.
That's competition in the way of firing squad is a competition between two
Right.
two teams.
Right. It's got a giant hole in the frontal. It looks like it was just bitten through.
Oh, yes, you
Right.
have
But
showed
what
me
you don't
this
see on
one,
dromaeosaurs
yes.
are like gouges from like facial biting.
Mhm.
Now, is that because they're not strong enough to do that? Probably not. Tyrannosaurs' bite forces are stronger, and we're going to talk about that next.
Yeah.
But
But-
you don't need to be that strong to scrape the bone.
And presumably they're not habitually biting full force in these displays.
Oh no, if they
or
were doing
you'd
that,
have obliterated snouts.
right, we would find a lot of T-Rex brain cases with just the front blown out like a blunderbuss in an old Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah, it's like someone put their
Yeah.
finger in a shotgun barrel.
Yeah, exactly.
You're despicable.
So let's talk about the bite force. You may have heard on this channel that it was 88 million newtons. I would like to correct the record. It wasn't, but it was still a lot of newtons. There have been a huge range of estimates on this. The highest estimate that was ever published was 350,000 newtons, which is, let me be clear, that would be astoundingly strong. That is well over
I have a converter up. Hang on.
Oh,
So
no.
how many newtons is that?
350,000.
That would be 78,683 pound force, which I'm assuming kind of converts. I don't know how that converts to pounds per square inch, but
Huh. That's pretty good.
Do you have a graph of like modern animals? Because neither of those numbers make any sense.
I'm finding
Yeah,
the...
I'm trying to find analogs.
No,
for like
I'm reading
what
through
this
the
is
paper
doing.
right now to get a comparison to the largest crocs.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, what does this compare to construction equipment?
A small yield
That's okay.
atomic bomb.
A fair answer. I was like, a pound force is a unit of force used in some systems of measurements. It should not be confused with pound mass. A pound force is equal to the gravitational force exerted on a mass of 1 pound. So you can think of it as essentially like a pound. A pound on your arm is exerting a pound force on your arm.
That's interesting, because I thought a pound was a force. Like, I always learned to view
Is
it
it
as
wait,
like,
hang on. Hey, wait, now I'm confused.
maybe
Well, that's
people...
why like normally it's like pounds per square inch. Or
Well,
something
that's
like
pressure. Because like the
Yeah.
idea is like a pound is not a
Right.
mass; it's a mass being accelerated on Earth. But because
Yeah.
like that's our frame of reference, people usually use pounds as if they're mass. So I'm wondering if the pound force thing was
Unit
like
of force.
an explicit way to say like we are talking about the force here, we're not using pounds to mean mass.
Final ranking video. Watch the skeleton crew.
Hang on. It all makes sense now. This is a separation between pound force and pound mass, which is often called a pound. There is a unit of pound mass, which is just a standardized amount of material that exerts a pound force on Earth.
Huh.
So you can use theoretically a pound mass if you want. It is the full name of it is the avoirdupois pound. A pound force is equal to the gravitational force exerted on a mass of 1 avoirdupois pound on the surface of the Earth. So you can convert newtons to pound force, which is essentially just pounds.
Who needs the metric system, right?
And so remind 350,000,
350,000.
78,000 pounds. Now it's not per square inch, mind you, but that's just like if you imagine a T-Rex biting your foot. If it had that high a bite force, that would be like 78,000 pounds.
It's like a mile, a little bit.
Right. Right, that would hurt. Maybe a little. Right. To put it in different terms, I guess, 39 tons. Now
You only have to load 16 of those to make a song.
But what do
so-
you get, Dalton?
Well, hopefully you'll get some more refined bite force estimates for T-Rex.
all right. Now I'm
So
gonna stop
sorry.
digging mucus out of my
Say the
nose.
number again. It was
300. Well, I don't want to belabor this one because it's
No,
wrong.
no,
but
no.
Yeah, 350,000 newtons was the highest estimate.
So that would be about 3 times the amount of force applied by a seatbelt and an airbag to a restrained passenger in a car that's hitting a stationary barrier at 100
So,
kilometers.
Scott, what
an
I'm
hour.
hearing
Right.
is it would actually, being bitten by a tyrannosaur with that much strength would actually be 4 times as safe as being in...
There you go.
It's 3 times as bad as getting into a crash at highway speed and having the seatbelt and airbags deploy.
Right.
And it's a little bit less. It's a little bit less force than a turbo fan, a General Electric turbofan aircraft engine.
All right.
All right, that's good. I alluded to this earlier. This estimate is not correct. This was done based on like a regression of just body mass to bite force. And when you don't have a living thing that's anywhere near the body mass of a T-Rex, that's just not the most reliable way to do stuff. I don't mean to be like overly criticizing the study. It's a reasonable way to try to assess it. But regressions tend to get fuzzy the further you take them away from the data you train them on. Right? So if you have observations here and you want to extrapolate all the way out here, you're going to have more error in that. Right?
Yeah.
And so you're going orders of magnitude beyond what you can really measure.
Like the time we tried to give an elephant LSD. We found that out.
Exactly. So Paul Gignac and Greg Erickson, I choose to not know about what you're talking about. Greg Erickson and Paul Gignac, but actually Paul Gignac and Greg Erickson, it's the author order here, developed a much more biologically informed computer model to estimate T-Rex bite force at different points along the tooth row, where they used like dissection of modern archosaurs to reconstruct the musculature of the skull. By the way, they give it something that looks quite a lot like an exoparia of a recent paper, which is interesting. Cool. I mean, we know that there's an adductor mandibulae externus or superficialis. But the position they reconstruct for it looks quite a lot like recent reconstructions of the exoparia. I don't know if that's coincidental or not. And if you don't know what the exoparia is, check out the really cool paper by Henry Sharp, and please actually read it.
Don't just look at the figures.
Please.
Don't do it. Read it.
Right. Read the paper.
At least
read
the
some
abstract.
of the words they wrote. Right. So they
How recent is this bite force paper? Sorry.
2017.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And it's a computer model. The computer model is based on CT scans of Stan's skull because that was what was available at the time. But in the theme of Stan is the basis of a lot of research, they estimate that at the back of the tooth row, you can get a bite force of up to 34,500 newtons. So about a tenth of the highest estimate that we were just talking about. But still the strongest bite force of any terrestrial animal.
Yeah, that's a bit more than a saltwater crocodile.
It's actually quite a lot more. The largest direct measurement from a saltwater crocodile was 16,400.
Wikipedia, you lied to me.
I know. So we are
It's about
talking
8,000 pounds.
Oh, well, that's from a Greg Erickson paper from 2012.
Now, what's
apparently
interesting is that the direct measurement from the saltwater crocodile says that it's 3,690 pounds. Which I don't.
Oh my god, we're gonna get it. We're gonna get an 88 million Newton situation again. No, let him try.
I've got a Newton. I've got a Newton pound converter up.
Okay. So they say 16,414 is the equivalent of 3,690 pounds.
And that's correct.
Okay, got it. So for T-Rex, what is the poundage then?
It's close to 8,000. It's like 7,700 some odd.
Right, so that's 4 tons of bite
Good
weight,
God.
I suppose. Right, this is very strong. What is interesting is that they actually articulate pretty good reasons to think that these tyrannosaurs would not be biting that much harder than crocs, because the actual architecture of the teeth is pretty similar in that they've got pretty thin enamel. And crocs, which also bite really hard, actually have pretty low safety factors for their teeth. Like the strength of the teeth is only a little bit larger than the typical bite force they endure.
Really?
And tyrannosaur teeth often have tip spalling, where like the apex of the tooth is like kind of cratering in response to
Jesus.
right. And so do croc teeth quite a lot. So they're frequently biting. They're probably not infrequently, rather, biting harder than their teeth can really take and
I
damage.
think those things fall out.
They're biting so hard they're exploding their own teeth?
That not really exploding. More cratering, like they're kind of like they're like making like impact craters on them.
They're mushrooming like a bullet.
Right. Yes.
Holy
These are not what Scott. Please help me out here. What's the kind of bullet that's got like a soft and it's not a hollow?
It's a soft tip. There's
a
soft tips.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's basically what it is here. It's a thin enamel shell, and then a lot of dentin, which is also what crocs do. So because like there's no precise occlusion with reptile teeth, like they don't interlock the way mammals do. They tend to get loaded from a lot of different directions. So reptiles that are adapted for really high bite force tend to develop these robust conical teeth, which is not something that mammals really do. Like durophagus mammals like hyenas don't have conical teeth. They have big, strong teeth. But basically this helps them take loads from any direction without failing. Because T-Rex, like tooth replacement, seems to have been on the order of a little over 2 years. So like the lifespan of a T-Rex tooth is about 2 years of time.
No, okay, that's actually longer than I thought.
Yeah, no, they have a fairly slow tooth replacement rate. I would imagine this might be a function of just how big they are. Like, I mean, T-Rex's teeth are enormous, right?
Yeah.
They're going to take a long time to grow, but they're maintained partially by having this nearly cylindrical cross section, which makes them quite a lot stronger and less likely to be destroyed catastrophically by an unexpected like direction
Okay.
of loading. But it is true that you see like tooth spalling, where the tooth is kind of cratering in response to these forces in these large tyrannosaurs. So
And
it is affecting their teeth that they're doing this.
it's interesting that they also then have the thin enamel is even compared to other dinosaurs.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that like so? Yeah, dentin is more is less brittle than enamel.
Oh, interesting.
So I wonder if changing that ratio is kind of reinforcing the tooth. Like you don't have as hard of an external surface, but if you slam it really fast, it's not going to like crack.
Right. And I will say I don't think I've ever seen a tyrannosaur tooth that appears to have been broken like perimortem. Like I've certainly seen broken teeth that are like taphonomically broken. Excuse me while I dab at my nose like a sick Victorian child. I've never seen one where it looks like the tooth broke during life.
Interesting.
Like, you know, it seems to be broken in a fossil way, not in like they cracked a tooth kind of way. I've certainly seen infections around the face of tyrannosaurs, though. Like Sue very famously has a lot of infected lesions. MOR 980, I think, also has a few. There's like a bunch of tyrannosaurs that have like odd things going on around the oral margin. Like and that might be more related to the facial biting, actually. Like I imagine that was a high likelihood of infection type behavior. The thing that I really can't square with that, and like I just wonder how much it really killed them, it is puncturing the anterorbital sinus, because they've got a huge anterorbital fenestra, and if they're biting each other in the rostrum, like presumably these puncture wounds are going right into the anterorbital into the anterorbital sinus itself in life. And I don't know if that's just not that problematic and they can heal from it, but I imagine that that's a very dangerous situation. Like
for cranial sinuses, they're more infection prone. Like their immune response might be a little more robust, like immune wise. I don't know, like, but right. I know, but having like a constantly gaping wound is still different. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, like, I imagine not a lot of really vital stuff ran through there, but it just, like, I feel like they would just be pouring blood down into, like, the respiratory tract. Well, not really. It would have to go down the trachea, which I'm sure they could avoid. It's not going to be, like, in the nose.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Cool stuff.
Another really cool thing that Greg Erickson's and Paul Gignac's paper talks about is the way that, like, and I didn't realize this was a scientific problem, but like most animals we see alive today that eat bone are mammalian. Like hyenas are the classic example, right? I think wolverines also do this. There's some like Durophagus mustelids, I believe. But regardless, they do this via precise tooth occlusion, where the teeth are fitting together as like a mortar and pestle, and they grind together and they can smash through the bone. Right. Amelia's got a good example right there.
Sorry, I'm muted. Yeah, just it's this in the back here. You can kind of see how they're shearing against each other.
Right, and that precise occlusion is like key to mammalian dietary like diversity. And so like a point of their paper was just saying, how do you actually become a bone eater, like or an osteophagous animal, as they call it, which is the scientific term, if you're not precisely occluding your teeth? And the answer appears to be that they were like the tooth offset, like the offset tooth rows, set up a 3-point loading scheme where you can like have a tooth on the top and 2 teeth on the bottom, or 2 teeth on top and 1 tooth on the bottom, intersecting whatever bone they're biting through and causing mechanical failure. One of the other cool things is that right at the region of the largest tooth, and Alex is about to perk up, right at the area where the largest teeth in both jaws are, is a giant flat expansion of the vomer, which is apparently something that like, or rather this like quote unquote secondary palate is something that's actually used by modern crocodilians for the same purpose, where sometimes they will brace a bone or a thing they're eating partially against the roof of their mouth and then against two teeth, and they'll break it that way through
Yes.
contact. And so it's possible that that vomer expansion is actually evolving not to strengthen the skull against high bite forces or something, but specifically to give them like a flat reinforced plane of area, like plane of contact, where they can brace a bone partially against the roof of their mouth and crack it. Which is very cool. I think it's interesting that it like coincides at exactly the point where you have the largest teeth in the jaw. Anyway, that's far from the only paper on Tyrannosaur bite force, but the basic idea here is probably that Tyrannosaurus rex, in particular maybe Tarbosaurus as well, was an osteophagous animal. This is something that is specialized for breaking through and eating bone. One other interesting thing they point out is that the position of the tooth serrations would be functioning very well for propagating cracks between teeth, which is another key component of the system. So you're generating like failure points, and then you have serration rows on the teeth, which will help direct crack propagation toward the adjacent teeth. What they also point out, and I just love this little detail here, and I'm just trying to... Oh yes, there's a fun little aside. It's a parenthetical. Although not testable in our modeling, catastrophic explosion of some bones, particularly smaller elements or those with thin cortices, may have also occurred due to the introduction of strain energy densities exceeding the limits of bone. So for relatively smaller things, the bones are actually going to explode under the pressure.
Cool.
And that is one of the ways that we can tell what coprolites in the Hell Creek belong to T-Rex is because they... every once in a while, you'll find these fossilized turds that are like the size of my arm, and they are made up of like 50% exploded bone fragments. And it's like, don't think that was a Chiropter.
Yeah, it probably wasn't. It is really, really cool. And it might be part of a unique dietary niche for T-Rex. That also might be part of why it gets so big. Right? I don't know. Like, maybe if they're just utilizing more of the carcass, it's helping them to get to large body sizes like that.
Well, I mean, the elephant in the room is, could they use this as an adaptation for scavenging?
Oh my god.
Oh, I forgot that was even something we needed to talk about.
Oh my god. And we're 3 hours into the video.
No, we're doing fine.
We're nowhere near done talking about this.
No, we're not.
We're halfway.
It's 1 a.m.
We're
Do you
over
know where your
halfway.
skeleton crew is? So let's talk about scavenging. Jack Horner, in the 1990s, became very famous for articulating and really evangelizing a hypothesis that T-Rex was a dedicated scavenger. And I'm going to briefly quote from Wikipedia, because I don't think there was ever a scientific paper published about this. And I want to just talk about what the reasoning was. Let's just find out.
I don't remember if there was ever really a paper about it. There must have been. Surely.
There is no paper cited on Wikipedia.
Dear viewers, some amount of a transcription of a talk from the 90s by Jack Horner was just read. Maybe none of it. And if that's the case, you can find this transcription online and read it yourself. It explains some of the inceptions of the ideas that T-Rex was a scavenger, which we're going to discuss in more detail now. But it should also be noted that that talk was quite mean-spirited. And I don't think a lot of the things that were said make a tremendous amount of sense.
No, they don't. And I think if you read through this as well, I will just say at this moment, and take this as you will, that if you've read my preprint on dinosaur ontogeny and how to reconcile the difficulties we've had with ontogeny and do taxonomy, you've probably noticed that a lot of my comments are specifically rebuttals of a lot of Jack Horner's research on the topic. And I just would like to posit that I think I think his writings on that topic make a similar amount of sense as his writings on Tyrannosaurus Rex being a scavenger.
Yep.
That's all I'll say. Yes. Now, listen. Before we criticize Jack a lot, I want to briefly say, Jack built the Museum of the Rockies, and that's an important contribution that's led to a tremendous amount of new fossil material being discovered and training a lot of people. And Jack, it was a prodigious field excavator. I think he's still going out into the field now. He's close to 80. Has found a lot of important fossils, and those are things that are very, very important contributions to the field. I'm now going to switch into criticizing this T-Rex as a scavenger idea, which, my God, Dalton, I hope we decide to keep the reading in the video, because my Lord.
It's, I will say this, whether we keep it or not, the mentality behind keeping it, because viewer, to let you behind the curtain a little bit, I know that I'm going to be editing this video. It's rough because growing up, Jack Horner was I wouldn't know if I'd even say he was a hero of mine, but he was a big influence in my house. We watched tons of dinosaur documentaries that featured Jack Horner.
Oh yeah.
There was a lot, he was a big force in my early life. The first scientific lecture I ever saw was one that he gave on ontogeny. And it brings me no joy to have to critique. I mean, critique does not generally bring me joy in general, but this part, a particularly harsh critique, as one might expect to be levied from that, brings me no joy. That being said, there are also many personal aspects that don't warrant discussion that have already removed the shine from that particular apple. It's just a very unfortunate situation to have been a dinosaur loving child in the late 90s. To see the development and gain the knowledge, both professional and extra professional, about this particular individual. Maybe I won't even keep that part, but it's out there. Yes,
and there, people are complicated, but some people are more complicated than others. It brings me no joy either. Something we have not really touched on in this video yet, and we might treat very briefly, is a similar thing that I was involved with recently with the discussion of how many species are represented by fossils we call T-Rex. Where I wound up on the, I'll just say it briefly. Greg Paul and a few co-authors proposed that there were 3 species in that fossil assemblage, and Thomas Carr invited me to join the paper rebutting that idea. I contributed all of the statistical analyses and showed that there was no scientific case to be made for that. And I know, because I'm active in our community, that Greg Paul is not particularly pleased about that paper. Let's just put it lightly. And
yeah, that's a way to put it.
Yeah, he's not particularly pleased. And I feel similarly to Dalton in that, I did not exactly relish the fact that Greg Paul, who was a childhood, I wouldn't say hero exactly, but certainly, maybe role model in some respect of, really moving the science forward, wound up as, an actual personal enemy. It doesn't feel good when it happens.
But T-Rex is a scavenger. What about it?
Right.
It probably did that.
Yes.
At some point.
I was about to say, Scott, did you hear anything we just said?
No. The point is, it's something that I still actually get questions about, to this day. That people will still ask me. It's oh, so what's this I hear about? T-Rex actually wasn't a predator, and my response is always, T-Rex was a meat eater. It's if a lion comes across a cheetah kill on the savannah, it's not going to turn its nose up at it and go, I am the king of the jungle, I deserve only the freshest meat. No, it's going to be, I'm bigger than you, I'm taking this, and then take it.
Right.
That's how it works. And also, this is something that I remember James and I talked about back when I was at the AMNH.
I was about to bring this up.
An obligate scavenger is kind of a vertebrate obligate scavenger in a terrestrial environment is only, there was a paper on this, if memory serves, is only really plausible if you can fly.
Right.
Because you need to be able to cover, because I don't know if you've been outside at some point, there aren't corpses everywhere.
Right.
Like-
T-Rex weighs 8 tons and has an endothermic metabolism. It
Now-
needs to eat every few days minimum.
Now, like, true, this is like modern ecosystems are not 100% analogous to prehistoric ones, and also like shifting baselines, and like there's less animals around, all that sort of stuff. All that notwithstanding, to be an obligate scavenger, you need to be able to cover a lot of ground incredibly quickly with relatively low energy expenditure and be able to survey a lot of that land. The way you do that is you fly. That's why all of the obligate scavengers, all of the obligate vertebrate scavengers in terrestrial ecosystems are vultures.
So what you're telling me is that T-Rex could fly.
Yeah, because I remember going back to things that we saw on TikToks that are definitely true. Is that remember T-Rex? All of the scientists are wrong. T-Rex's arms were mounted backwards. They were actually wings because they were dragons and they could fly.
Oh,
Folks, if you see the suggestion online, another point to fight misinformation wherever you see it, speak up, because we have to. There is a thing that gets put around sometimes online for some reason that we are mounting T-Rex arms incorrectly, that they would face backwards and be wings. That seems to be based off of an interpretation that the scapula is actually the humerus, and that the radius, like the humerus, is a fused radius and ulna. The radius and ulna are carpals, or a like carpometacarpus as in birds. We have lost James. That's troubling.
He's back,
But
folks.
he's
back.
coming back. He's back.
hello.
We're all
Very
fine.
sorry.
This is incorrect. This is just factually wrong. We have extraordinarily good evidence to support the homology of every element of the Tyrannosaur forelimb and forelimb girdle. We know what these elements are. Because of the way they're shaped, we can orient them more or less correctly. There may be, some discussion on exactly the positioning of the shoulder girdle, because those don't have a direct connection to the vertebrae like the sacrum does. There's a little bit of wiggle room, but not so much wiggle room that we have completely misidentified every single element of the forelimb. That's just not true.
I do love that we're getting like way new wacky science conspiracy theories.
It's interesting.
Like I feel like we're archaeologists sometimes now.
It is also that, like, I'll just bring this up shortly, and then we could move on to finishing the rest of the discussion of this animal. One of the things that has always just absolutely boggled my mind about this particular, I'll be generous and call it a hypothesis.
That's
You're
a
very
generous
kind.
thing to call it. Yeah.
So it's always the thing of, they had wings and they could fly. How big of wings do the famously tiny armed T-Rex, even if it's the whole thing of like, misinterpreting like the individual bones and stuff like that. This thing weighed 8 tons. This thing would have to have a wingspan bigger than its whole damn body to be able to fly.
Yes. I will be charitable to the misinformed. At least in my experience, I have not seen people then saying it had wings to fly, but what I have seen is that it had larger forelimbs with wing feathers that it could use to display like an ostrich.
I have specifically heard flying that they were
ridiculous.
dragons.
Speak up against misinformation, folks. Was T-Rex a scavenger? Not exclusively.
Now,
Yes.
Scott, or Dalton rather, is there a Mr. Information?
No, but
Could I please speak to
in the
misinformation?
later bad seasons of the X-Files, there's a guy who's literally like Mr. Misinformation. Yeah.
Really?
Fascinating.
No, you
gotta
don't.
watch
Just
that show.
stop at like
Me
season
too.
6 or 7.
Okay.
Okay, 2 questions. Have we adequately finished discussion of scavenger? Do we want to like come down hard on one end? And then 2, what else is there?
I think we
afterwards?
came down pretty
I
hard
think
on
we
the
just
one
need
end,
to
but
like do a concise summary in case you decide to cut the reading.
Let's do
Dalton.
it. Would you mind doing a concise summary, James?
Not one bit. So I'll read from the Wikipedia page from whence we came. So basically, there are a few pieces of evidence that that Jack brings up in this talk, and I want to emphasize that talk that we may or may not have a reading of in the video. It is the only published, to our knowledge, only published articulation of this idea, and this is not a peer-reviewed journal article. So this is something, and like we talk about this a lot on the Skeleton Crew, but like there's often ideas that percolate through our community that are spread through like mass media, now through social media, but in like prior years by documentaries and articles and books and everything that are not part of the scientific literature, right? They're not based on data or hypothesis tests or statistics or anything. They're ideas. And this is a big one. I remember the first time that I ever thought, hey, you could test a hypothesis was there was a Tyrannosaurus Rex documentary that I rewatched recently on YouTube, and I was like, this is actually an excellent science documentary. It's only like 20 minutes long, but it has like good interviews with a lot of different scientists. And it basically has Phil Curry being like, these things are predators and they could move fast because look at the lengths of the lower leg bone, love the tibia relative to the femur. And then Jack Horner's like, no, the femur's longer than the tibia. They can't run fast. And I remember watching this when I was like probably 4 or 5, and my mom was in the room with me. And she was just like, couldn't they just measure it? Couldn't we just know that information? I really enjoyed that. And it turns out, yes, you can. And if you measure it, one of these ideas is right, which is that they're actually about the same length. There's very, very minor variation. They're pretty close on each other. And I will agree with Jack that T-Rex is not built to run particularly fast, but neither are large Carcharodontosaurs or even Allosaurus. Abelosaurs, like we just talked about Carnotaurus with this. By the way, we recently saw that our Carnotaurus video was quoted on Reddit, and everybody on Paleontology Reddit dogpiled on the person posting it, saying that we didn't know what we were talking about, and that Carnotaurus definitely had special speed powers. No, it didn't. But you know what, OP?
Good job.
You were right. And everybody else insisting that Carnotaurus actually had long legs is misled and wants it to be a character in Primal Carnage or something. T-Rex is not built for amazing speed, but it's better proportioned for speed than any other large theropod. And more primitive, or not even more primitive, but other smaller tyrannosaurs like Albertosaurus and Gorgosaurus are proportioned better for speed. And this probably is that T-Rex is getting too large to move very quickly. We were going to do a section of the video about T-Rex's speed, but this video is getting very long, so we're not going to do that. So all I'm going to say is that T-Rex probably couldn't run as fast as it did in Jurassic Park, because that's really fast. T-Rex may not have been able to run at all because the forces of like a suspended phase in the locomotion may have been literally too much for its muscles to bear. But it's an animal with legs that are like 10 feet long, and so its maximal speed of movement, even walking, was probably quite fast compared to a human being.
Here.
Right? You could probably walk at like 15 miles an hour, and that's probably faster than you can run.
It's faster. It is one of those
almost
things
Usain
that,
Bolt speed.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's one of those things that's another thing that gets like bandied around a bunch. There was like, oh, T-Rex was slow. It could only go like maybe 20, 25 miles per hour. I was like,
right.
I was like, oh, so it could go faster than Usain Bolt. Oh, okay, cool.
Right.
Like,
if people are like, oh, you could get away from it in a car. I'm like, yeah, but you know what dinosaurs didn't have? Cars. Like
then why do we call them carnosaurs?
Oh my god. You got me. Okay, so T-Rex is not built for tremendous speed, but it's still probably faster than other large theropods, which, by the way, Jack wasn't arguing that Allosaurus is a scavenger. Right? So Jack's argument is these things are too slow to catch prey, which is not true. Also, Triceratops was probably not moving that quickly either.
He talks about Triceratops like running away, and I'm like, how fast are we saying that thing's going?
Right. Second, predators don't need to use their arms to grab prey. For an example of this, I would like to point to mammals. Canids, for instance, do not catch prey with their forelimbs. They run after their prey and bite them and subdue them. I would...
Watching a greyhound run after a rabbit and then just stand up, grab it.
Like Saturn devouring its son.
That's what it's going for.
Yeah.
Crocodilians.
Famously use their hands.
Snakes.
Yeah, snakes.
Secretary birds, Siriamas.
Yeah,
Snakes are scavengers.
right.
Oh,
Whales.
good. Very good one.
Well, okay. Well, all of these are good. Anyway, this is a ludicrous idea. It had a strong sense of smell. Cool. So do dogs. Next question. T-Rex could crush bone? Cool. So do crocodiles, which are hunting their prey. And so do hyenas, which I think also hunt their prey pretty frequently.
Very frequently. Like the
They
idea
also
of
don't
them.
use their forelimbs.
What'd you
Sorry,
say?
go on, Amelia.
I said they do, and they also don't use their forelimbs.
Got him.
Right.
Mhm.
Long story short, there's never been any like actual peer-reviewed science about this. This has just been Jack's idea, and all of the lines of argument don't hold up to any scrutiny. T-Rex was not a scavenger. It doesn't make any sense, and that's it.
I want to put just one thing on the record for this because
Yes.
I found a paper, and there's like been a little bit of literature,
Okay.
but I don't know that really any of it has been like, and it's hard to I'm not surprised it was like hard to find. But this is from a paper that talks about the idea and kind of is assessing actual direct evidence for hunting behavior in T-Rex.
Is this
survived
Tom
injury.
Holtz's paper?
No, I don't believe so.
Oh, interesting, because I know Tom published what I think is a refutation of the idea as well.
No, this is not Tom Holtz's paper. This is
Okay.
actually a De Palma paper.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But this is there's a few citations in this paper. One of which is an idea that was proposed by Lambie. I gotta find the right one.
Probably 1917, right?
Pretty early 1900s. Yeah. That I think that Albertosaurus might have been a scavenger based on the fact that the teeth did not have wear, so the thought was it's eating soft meat. Is what I can find from this without reading that paper.
Yes, I think that's the Gorgosaurus monograph, and I think
Gorgosaurus,
that's exactly what he said.
So that the idea of some scavenging has existed for a long time. There's a few other papers that have some remarks on feeding behavior as determined by tooth marks on dinosaur bones. There is taphonomy of Tyrannosaurus deinonychus associations, and another taphonomy paper that have touched on the ideas of scavenging in dinosaurs. And then this paper also cites the same talk that we have mentioned before. It cites Lambie 1917. It cites a Mammals of Africa paper, which I assume is making reference to hyenas. Then cites the kind of one thing I'm seeing that is distinct, and I don't know the conclusions of this paper, is a paper called "Could Tyrannosaurus Rex Have Been a Scavenger Rather Than a Predator? An Energetics Approach."
And who's that by?
That is by G.D. Ruxton.
It's a cool name.
That is a cool name.
And I will find. I've Googled it. I'm opening it so we can see the abstract of this paper, just to see what this kind of idea was. And this was in 2003, so this is still kind of responding, I think, to the Horner idea of scavengers, which is, to my knowledge, not directly published as like a formal like, here's what I think. Arguments on whether T-Rex were likely to be an active predator or scavenger have been based on evidence from jaw morphology or dentition. Here we adopt a novel approach using energetics. We argue an ecosystem as productive as the current Serengeti would provide sufficient carrion for such a scavenger. Hence, T-Rex need not have been an active predator and could have found sufficient food purely by scavenging. This is really the only like concrete literature I see with this, which makes me think a bit of that agent-based like Allosaurus scavenger paper that I have my own particular disagreements with, but is, in an environment with enough carcasses, it's not an impossibility. But what I think is very interesting about this whole phenomenon is there's a number of papers in the scientific literature responding to this idea, that this idea is mostly a like pop culture.
I wonder if that's ever happened before.
Mm-hmm.
About a
No
theropod
way.
that's apparently couldn't go fast enough to catch its prey. Nah, couldn't be.
Oh, I was gonna ask if you were saying if this is the first time that the paleo community in the scientific literature is responding to pop culture and or unpublished things, as if they're
Who knows?
That's an interesting dynamic to the scavenger thing, is that it's provoked discussion in the literature, which is a good thing. But the basis for it is kind of difficult to find.
Yes, and I want to react to one more thing here, which is what Jack has claimed he was doing with the scavenger hypothesis. So according to Jack Horner, this whole thing was actually
Oh my
social
god!
experiment.
Did he really?
What? No.
Yes. He
No.
said, well, not really. I mean, kind of. The idea here
God
being
damn.
that he felt that the paleontological community had a bad habit of accepting like ideas and hypotheses that weren't tested
God
just
damn
based
it.
on intuition, and that he was trying to be a devil's advocate for an idea to force people to actually test it.
Me when I'm caught lying.
Now, I've got a few things to say. Jack, 1, I hope your ideas about dinosaur ontogeny are also this. 2,
It's just a prank, bro.
it's just a prank. It's just a prank.
Wait, bro. Relax.
Second. No. Second, if that's what this is, you would have proposed it in the scientific literature, and not in a popular talk where you open by on Laura Dern, Steven Spielberg, and Bob Bacher through omission, which I find very weird that the person he was not willing to single out by name was Bob Bacher. Anyway. Like, simply put, scientific ideas are not put forward in popular talks with no, like, literature backing. Like, you could publish an article that says, we always assume T-Rex is a predator, but here are things I think are inconsistent with that. Like, can we actually test this idea? But you don't get to then say, this idea that I forced a lot of theropod specialists to waste their time with to refute my obvious, like, just kind of pontification.
I'm just asking questions.
I'm just asking questions. It's exactly that. You don't get to claim that that's then like a valid scientific hypothesis that you were trying to articulate, or an effort to get people to do better science by explicitly testing hypotheses, because that's never what you did. I guess all of that is to say T-Rex was a predator, and this idea did not really have merit.
Oh, I guess we can end the whole predator thing with, we have evidence of it being predatory, despite like not just like, oh, of course it was, and all of the negative evidence of like, well, we can't prove all of this stuff. Well, it definitely wasn't a scavenger like this. There are fossils of dinosaurs with healed T-Rex bites on them. There's an Albertosaurus that has, between a couple of its caudal vertebrae, a T-Rex tooth embedded in there that's broken off and healed.
Right. Well, clearly it was trying to scare the Albertosaurus away
Yes,
from the
Scott,
carcass.
come on.
That's a good point.
He covered all his bases.
That's a good point.
By taking one step out onto a baseball field.
Right. So, yeah, that's real evidence also.
Oh, we haven't done phylogeny.
Cool. It's phylogeny time.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alex.
Well, it's a carnosaur. No, I'm just kidding. This is the last time I'm going to do it for this video until we do better videos with more phylogeny. The best video is just phylogeny. It's just
a
me. We're going to start at biota and we're working our way up. No, so yes, obviously this is the most like famous theropod dinosaur in the world, and don't give me any of that. Oh, but isn't like a chicken the most famous there? Shut up. Yes, technically, sure, but you know what we mean here. Theropods, bipedal predatory dinosaurs. Show up right. Yes,
Predatory,
mostly. Oh, the scavenger.
Well, I mean,
yes, ha ha ha.
Isn't T-Rex a
How funny.
scavenger?
So early on, I at the beginning of the section, I joked about it being a carnosaur, kind of the early era of theropod classification. You got put in two bins. You are a carnosaur, you are big and a meat eater, or a coelurosaur, you are small and a meat eater, and gracile. This has obviously since been revised, and now we know that Tyrannosauroids are coelurosaur dinosaurs as well. They are a independent origin of giant size within Coelurosaurs, which is kind of cool. It seems that almost every Coelurosaur group does this, with maybe the exception of compsognathids, which you may have heard are a fake group. And I direct you to... No, that's just too mean. You may have heard that they're not a real group. This is a point of contention, but it's not important. So...
We also covered it in our
we did a
compsognathids video.
Good point. Oh, geez. Possibly relevant to Tyrannosaur phylogeny because some of them have been proposed to be early diverging Tyrannosauroids. Maybe could be... but Tyrannosauroids are this lovely group. They're one of the only Coelurosaur groups with any kind of like real Jurassic representation that's reliable. There are some Paravians, but most Coelurosaur clades are missing a really good Jurassic representation. Albertosaurs are one exception. Hopefully this will change soon. They start small. We're evolving. It's, oh my god, it's the late Jurassic. What's happening? Why do we all have crests for some reason? I don't know. It's now the early Cretaceous. There are maybe some leftover early Tyrannosaurs, things like Tyrannosaurus, which do independently gain large size. And then we have the hand Tyrannosaurs, which is an improper use of the word of that prefix, but oh well.
Yeah.
There we go.
Would
Thank
they
you,
prefer
Scott.
by Tyrannosaurs?
You're welcome.
I was going to ask, how do we know if these Tyrannosaurs are pan? That's a callback to our first ever video.
Panotyrannosaurs. This might include Megaraptorids, maybe. That'd be cool. Maybe. I don't know if that's where they go. And then in the early Cretaceous, generally small-bodied, small predators. And then something's happening in the middle Cretaceous where they're drinking grow juice and diversify cola. And then they go in the middle Cretaceous, and they are all over the place by the end of the late Cretaceous. And this is where we're interested. We're not talking about the early things. We're talking about, you've got big legs, you've got big head, you've got little arms, you're a Tyrannosaurid. There are a few competing phylogenies on the specific interrelationships of some of these groups, especially with in relation to the teratophonines, right, which are kind of move around. Sometimes I think they're the most primitive of these, and sometimes they're like a little farther up the tree.
Yeah, they're sometimes well, they're not ever the most primitive. Usually in modern trees, they are either very close they're almost always tyrannosaurines within tyrannosaurids. The point of debate is more, one, whether tyrannophonians are monophyletic, and two, whether they are closer to T-Rex than Spinosaurus. There's like been wars in Tyrannosaur systematics world over this, and as I have pointed out privately occasionally, this war boils down to about one node of movement between two clades.
That's wow.
Right. I mean, it's not... I guess what I'm saying is the trees are not that dissimilar.
And so now if I remember because this is not my group, and Jimbo will correct me if I'm incorrect, but generally the agreed upon topology for the group, in terms of things that are in the game, we can say. So we have Albertosaurines kind of out here, and then Alioramines and Tyrannosaurines, so Tarbosaurus, T-Rex, and Chinchasaurus. Chinchasaurus being a closer relative of Tyrannosaurus than something like Albertosaurus is.
Yes, that is the generally... I'm just checking to make sure. That is, I would not say that's generally agreed upon, because there are two competing matrices right now.
Tell us.
Well, let me just check to make sure I don't misquote Lowen's matrix, because basically the two matrices are one that has been published by Thomas Carr and Steve Brusati. The modern version of that matrix first basically premieres in 2016, and then there's another update in the 2017 Displetosaurus Horneri paper. Yes, okay, so I wasn't wrong about this. The competing matrix is designed by Mark Lowen. They're built very differently philosophically, and there's been a lot of debate between the teams about like which matrix is better. I'm not going to weigh in on that right now. But Thomas Carr's matrix gets Allioramians as
Okay,
Tyrannosaurines.
Okay, gotcha.
And Mark Lowen's gets them as non-Tyrannosaurids. It gets them outside of outside of Tyrannosauridae. Yeah. So they hop down like 2 legs.
Pardon me. Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
I really don't have all of them. Everything I have to say about Tyrannosaurid phylogenetics is, well, I guess not what I have to say. The things that are interesting to me and where my knowledge is deeper are what's happening down at the base.
Right. Because you're
Indeed.
all about that base, as they say.
As they say.
As they say.
Yeah, I mean, there is not, I think, a tremendous amount interesting about what's going on at the top of the group. Especially not a lot that's interesting that I can talk about right now, because I'll be publishing on Tyrannosaurid Systematics soon. The placement of Teratophonians will probably long remain the problem. And what a Teratophonian is going to be an interesting question. Like, Mark Lowen does not get them as monophyletic, but he gets Teratophonius, Pistachiaversa, and Lythranax as like sequential outgroups to Tyrannosaurus and Tarbosaurus and Shucheng Tyrannus. I believe that the let me check. The Brusati and Carr matrix tends to get like Lythranax and Teratophonius and a clade, but they get Pistachiaversa as a non-Tyrannosaurid, and they get Nanotyrannus as a little more derived than Teratophonians, but other phylogenies with that same matrix have like minorly altered the analytical parameters and get Nanotyrannus as a Teratophonian. So the answer is we've got no idea what the hell these things are, and if they're a group or not.
They're Tyrannosaurs, at least.
There's one interesting thing to talk about with Tyrannosaur systematics, because there's a truism that I hear a lot as if it's a generally accepted thing, and it's not really, which is, where did T-Rex come from? Right? Because in 2016, the Brusati and Carr matrix, or like this was the first paper that featured the Brusati and Carr matrix in its near current iteration, did a little bit of biogeographic analysis. And what they show is that there's the topology, once we get up near T-Rex, is Daspletosaurus, then Shucheng Tyrannus, then Tarbosaurus and T-Rex. So you get North America, Asia, North America. And they say that this is, they interpret this as potential evidence that T-Rex actually evolves in Asia and then migrates back into North America. They do not raise the alternative and equally parsimonious hypothesis that Shucheng Tyrannus and Tarbosaurus separately migrate into Asia from North America, and that T-Rex just stays in its ancestral area. Each of these biogeographic scenarios requires 2 evolutionary steps. You either have a whole lineage moving into Asia and then part of that lineage moving out, or you have 2 separate smaller lineages that move into Asia.
Yeah.
So these are equally parsimonious, and I've noticed a lot of like younger folks in the field have mentioned this to me as like a surprising and like cool but well understood biogeographic phenomenon. All I'm saying is that it's not necessarily true. It could very well be that T-Rex evolves in Asia and moves into North America. I am fine with that. But it doesn't have to be that. Just a little thing I think everybody should be aware of. I personally, if I had reviewed that paper, I probably would have asked them to at least like make clear that there was an equally parsimonious alternative. But they, that wasn't, and I mean, this was not a huge main point of the paper. But it's something that the press picked up and a lot of people picked up. So I don't really blame them for not going into more detail, but I think it was just an oversight. But it's something that I would have requested they probably build up a little bit more to avoid like accidentally giving the impression that their analysis like 100% supported that idea.
Sure.
And that's Tyrannosaur phylogeny. And at long last, Dalton,
T-Rex. It's time to rank it?
It's time to rank it. For the last time, we're ranking something. So Amelia, you start.
I don't like it as much as I do in the movie. To be clear, the first movie. Like, this looks more like the Jurassic World render than it actually looks like
It does.
the Jurassic Park actual model. And I've been thinking for at least part of this video, like how if I want to care about that distinction or not. I don't think I will as much as I think I want to note that this is not as good as it is in the original movie by a long shot. And the Jurassic World models of this thing are just not good. It looks very crusty. It looks very emaciated. The game model is not as terrible as some of the movie ones. Yeah, it's fine. I'll pretend for a second it's a little better than it is, because like I don't. It's not as bad as it looks in like the Jurassic World promotional art and most of those movies. It honestly looks kind of terrible. I'll give it an S. It's iconic. It's a good. Again, we're speaking more about the original thing from the original movie. Like, it's a really good example of how to stylize an animal. Like, it looks like a character. Like, yes, it has sharper angles to the face, but that was done on purpose to make it look like a character. Like, and that doesn't bother me, and it works. And also, like, in that movie, again, like, it looks great in the way it's lit and everything. Like, just adds to its presence. Yeah.
All right.
So you're going with S tier?
Yeah. It's not that it's better than it is in the newer movies. So I'm not gonna be harsh.
Yeah, because I agree with you. It just looks awful in so much of the Jurassic World franchise. I think it's one of the things that was a really big improvement in Dominion.
Yeah.
Is it did just start looking a lot better. I love this design. I am going to pretend it's the movie design because I can't not. One thing I love about it is if you like, when you really look at the face, especially of the animatronic, you've got so much detail. And even if the detail is not like right in its distribution, I think it adds a lot to the stylization. Like, as Amelia said, absolutely they're adding like angles and lines and everything. It looks kind of mean and all of that. But it also looks like an animal. Like it has, I know I say the phrase verisimilitude a lot in this series, but I kind of stand by it. Like, looking at that, it feels like, yeah, we cloned a real animal. This is a thing that existed. It's got all this gnarly. I think it's kind of something the Jurassic World movies lack a little, or like these unnecessary details that give things reality. Like, the Giganotosaurus doesn't feel like it's a real animal that's been brought back. It looks like it's like, well, it's a movie monster, so we gave it a mouth and eyes and all of that kind of stuff. And the T-Rex is like all this subtle color modeling and little ornamental scales all around the face and all of that. It feels real. Now, Dalton, can I be annoying and ask to see the green 1997 skin?
Absolutely.
Oh, the buck.
Because I will say, that kicks ass also. Beautiful
great.
sexual dimorphism. I love the subtle striping and all of that. Do they also have the Jurassic Park 3 skin as a separate thing? Or is that just...
They do.
They have that as separate? Like, just great.
Whenever I'm making my parks, I normally end up using this one and the 97 one as very subtle, different color variations of the same pattern.
It's just such a good design. And I love, like, the naturalistic coloring. Another thing I think the world movies have lost a little bit. Like, the Giga doesn't look naturalistic. This does. This looks like a real thing that evolved. And it's just so integral to the design ethos of the movies. I'm not going to belabor it. This is an S tier. It's iconic. This is a movie star to a similar degree of some actual human beings. Like, this is a celebrity dinosaur. And while it might be kind of cringy to say, I like it a lot. It's a cool dinosaur. While I will always joke that tyrannosaurs have some sort of Pharaoh's curse, that like the curse of Tutankhamun, that destroys the lives of anybody who work on them. I will also say...
It's not a joke, that's true.
It's true. It's not a joke. I'm also going to say I am very, very proud, or I don't know if proud's the right word. I guess I'm just very happy that, I've gotten to live the childhood dream of being a paleontologist and getting to work on T-Rex for a little while.
You can be proud of yourself for that.
Well, I don't know if I'm proud of myself, because I don't know if I did anything that really, like, made that happen, but it's very fulfilling. it's, sometimes when I'm not happy, I drive around because I'm living back where I grew up now, and I like drive past the route I used to take to get to middle school when I was like very insecure and didn't think I'd ever be
Mm.
like the kind of person I wanted to be. And I think like, for all the things that I might still think about myself now where I feel like, okay, I want to do better or achieve more or be different in some way, you know, it's kind of nice to know that the 12-year-old version of me, if I got to meet him right now, would probably be pretty happy to learn where I am. And that's a thing that I think is helpful to hold on to, especially as life gets increasingly difficult over time. Right? I've gotten to achieve a really like pure childhood dream. And while it's destroying my life in many respects, it also makes me happy in that singular one. So
Yeah.
I love T-Rex, unfortunately for me, and I love this design. This is an S tier, and I'm very happy we did actually manage to have it come out last.
Yeah. I can't say anything less than an S tier. I mean, do I have some little individual quibbles about this game model a bit? Yeah, but again, like my friends and colleagues here, I'm just kind of picturing this as an idealized agglomeration of the movie designs. To James's point of just being like an animal, that is one of the things that I love about the original Jurassic Park, of just how much just, oh, this is a living being that the dinosaurs act like, in particular the T-Rex. That one of the things that I always like to point at as proof of that, and I know I've mentioned it previously on the channel, um, and I know it's not necessarily a factor of this design specifically, but during the T-Rex breakout with the scene where it's attacking the cars and stuff, it seems like a deliberate choice was made to have it really, really seem like, if you know things about animal behavior, that's not a T-Rex that's trying to eat the people in the car. That is a big, curious animal that's playing around with a new thing that's engaging and making lights and sounds and stuff. And it just so happens to have a bite force that could explode every bone in
Mm.
everybody's body when it investigates things. In particular, the bit that always gets me of that is like after it investigates, kind of like mouthing and biting every bit of the car and like breaking the glass and stuff, it flips it over of just like, oh, maybe the way to get into this is on the underside. And as soon as it bites the soft tire, it's interested in that, and then it goes after him. I just find that it gives me such a similar vibe to seeing like my dog play with like a puzzle toy, or my cats figure out their little like treat roller and stuff like that. It's just like if I was in one of those big hamster balls and Jake and Elwood were the size of, I don't know, like Clifford the big red dog, and it's like, this is how it ends. Oh no. But like it really is like, this is the dinosaur. Like, to the point where there was a talk that I gave a while back in New York, about like the evolution of the perception of dinosaurs in media. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that a lot of other franchises or other movies will incorporate a large theropod in it, and then just basically make it not just T-Rex but the Jurassic Park T-Rex. Like the example that I one of the examples I used in that was in that Dwayne the Rock Johnson Journey to the Center of the Earth movie, if anybody remembers that thing exists. They get attacked by what is supposed to be a Giganotosaurus in there. It's just T-Rex. It's just the Jurassic Park T-Rex. Like the Will Ferrell Land of the Lost thing, that's just the Jurassic Park T-Rex, but a little bit more cartoony. Like, this thing is quintessential. And giving it anything less than an S seems disrespectful at that point.
And Scott, before Alex goes, I want to just say, pursuant to your whole talk about the breakout scene, I learned recently that in the original script there were 2 details that were left out, I think, due to special effects limitations. The first is that after it flips the car over, apparently you were originally supposed to see the T-Rex pick up grab the car by the rear axle and drag it backward a few steps, which was
I
also
like that.
supposed to apparently was the explanation a little bit for why you wind up in the cliff area, is that it explicitly is like just kind of pulling the thing, dragging it because it's just playing with it. Second, apparently when it bit the tire, it was originally supposed to have a very loud like tire pop sound and have it be like visibly startled for a little bit before going back in. Which I imagine that might have been a deliberate cut to not make it not look scary. But
there is, I mean, when in the movie, as we all know, that like there is something close to that of that it bites and it has the release of air and it's a hiss and it kind of recoils back of like engagement and then it goes back in.
Right. But I think it was really supposed to be like it scares itself, and then
that's
which would be
wonderful,
right? And I don't know why that one was cut because they could have done it, but I think the thing with the car was that they could not get the CGI model of the car to look like convincing being dragged through the mud, so they eventually just gave up on the idea. Because the car is a CG model when it's going after the tire, but that's like very deliberately lit and doesn't need to have like a mud trail being generated. Like in 93 effects, I don't think you could even make it work.
No. It's one of those things of just that, like in my head, whenever I see that scene now, it always just like reminds me of the stories of just like all the like surfers or swimmers or stuff who've been bitten by sharks and they're just like, oh, it's just an exploratory bite. It's just that's how they interact with the world, because they don't have hands because they're scavengers.
Right.
No.
Right. Like sharks are.
Yeah. No. That like their mouth is the way that they like dogs. It's like their mouth is the way they interact with the world. Like they're gonna mouth things. They're gonna all that sort of stuff. It's just that like a T-Rex barely picking up something of like this is interesting is there goes your leg.
Right.
So
it interacts with the world by atomizing it,
which is the scientific process.
And
the atomization of a continuous spectrum.
Well, let's atomize your rank here, Alex.
Many have described me as a cynic or a hater in the past. Or perhaps you've interacted with me on our Discord. And I understand why you come to these conclusions. The mind often reels when presented with truth. But I am not an unreasonable man. And one other truth is that this design is awesome. And it's the best T-Rex. And it's the one that I was exposed to when I was 5. So it slaps. This is an easy yes. I'm going to use my soapbox time. I'm not going to, everyone else has said why this design is great, better than I could. But I do want to, because there's a feather option, just very, very briefly, because sometimes when I'm on the internet,
yes,
put
I'll put
that
it on for you.
Put some feathers. You mind if a scaly boy speaks a little
Computer,
feather?
show me this guy's feathers.
This is cool. I like it, and it looks okay. You might, if you're a person who is online in dinosaur circles, you might sometimes see that there's like, did Tyrannosaurus Rex have feathers? Did it not have feathers? How do we know this? Why do we know this? Who am I? Where am I? And the answer to this question is we don't know. We know that it had some kind of squamous coverings on small parts of its body because we do have the impressions of scales. But that does not mean that it did not have some kind of filamentous integument somewhere. And I think it's kind of fun about this little model is that this is not like an unreasonable amount of filamentous integument for a tyrannosaur. This is reasonable. It's honestly, it's a little, I think it's even a little pushing what I would, like when I close my eyes and I think about it, I'm like, maybe it's a little long. I like it. I just want to, and we're gonna do a video about this later because I've drafted it. But feathers are cool, and the preservation of feathers is really interesting, and it's really worth keeping in mind that we do not know a lot about dinosaur integument. We know way more than we did 20 years ago, but there are so many questions like, what are dinosaur scales? How, like, there's this crazy thing that's happening in birds where if you've ever seen a bird's legs, they're scaly. Those are feathers. Those are feather derivatives, even the little round things on the bottom of their feet. And we know that some dinosaurs, like Conchovenator, have big scoots that in birds we know form from feathers. So, like, how much of it, like a theropod scalation, is like, you know, a weird truncated feather? Does that matter? You know, like, what's the preservation threshold of scales versus feathers? Stuff like that. So my only thing is, if you're like, hey, does it have feathers? It's like, yeah, maybe, probably. Like, most mammals retain a little bit of hair, but you might not be able to see it. All mammals retain hair. So it's, in my estimation, it's likely all theropods retain some degree of feathers. Actually, probably all dinosaurs, but that's my little feather soapbox. And in case I didn't say it, S.
Excellent. It's now it's time for my soapbox, in which I say Alex is wrong. And about no, I don't. I generally agree with everything he said. If you want like a take on what my personal kind of preference for T-Rex feathering looks like, it is honestly Prehistoric Planet.
Yes.
Where, like, when you get really close to them, you see like little feathers here and there, like they're there, they're in the interstitial, like, interstices, and I don't think that that's unreasonable at all.
I would have said the same thing, Dalton.
I've always described that as feathered in a way an elephant has hair.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, probably what's going on with these big tyrannosaurs. This design is T-Rex, though. Like, so I mentioned Prehistoric Planet. I like the T-Rex design in Prehistoric Planet quite a bit. I like the feathering. You know, I haven't seen all of it because Apple TV is tricky. But I like what I've seen. I like the T-Rex in that. I recognize that it's also not perfect, but in many ways it is more approaching our modern conception of the animal. That doesn't matter to me. If you ask me to imagine like most dinosaurs, my brain puts some work into kind of, oh, what do we know? What do we think? And like stuff like that. If you ask me to imagine T-Rex, it's this. This is T-Rex, like, for better or worse, and I think it's for better because I think it reflects like just so astoundingly how well captured this particular animal is in this design. Like, this is T-Rex, and it's, its face is a little funky, and that's fine. It is T-Rex, and like my mom, I make no secret of the fact that T-Rex is my favorite dinosaur. It just is. It's the coolest one. I'm sorry, but that I am in no small part in paleontology. I'm in no small part where I am in life today because of the movie Jurassic Park, and because I saw it at a young formative age and then developed interest in dinosaurs that was supported by my family. Right. My mom, for a long time, and I don't know if it's still the case, but it probably is, her favorite dinosaur is Brachiosaurus.
Oh, mine was too.
And I think that is in no small part because she saw Jurassic Park as an adult, right? And was amazed by the opening scene with the Brachiosaurus. And I agree, it's an amazing scene. Like, it's very moving, it's incredible. And for people who like were adults at that time, right? This is the first time a dinosaur is really being put on the screen in a convincing way that you're like, wow, that's real. That looks so real to me. That's amazing. It's in a way that I've never seen before. It's incredible. And like, I wish I could have had that experience. Mine is a little different because like I grew up, I don't remember if I saw Jurassic Park before I saw The Phantom Menace or not. But like certainly by the time I was remembering the media that I saw, I was already being exposed to other well-realized CG creatures. Right? The idea that you can put something on the screen that is imaginary or a reconstruction of something that's real and make it look real was not novel to me. But what was novel to me, I think, was the T-Rex. Like the combination of the animatronic, the CG, the verisimilitude of its behavior, of just kind of everything about this. Like, I mean, it's no wonder, and it's no, they were very smart filmmakers that they put as much effort into the design and realization of the T-Rex as they did, because it is like one of the stars of the movie, if not the big star of the movie, is this dinosaur. And you know, I'm here right now because of Jurassic Park, but I think I'm here right now in no small part because of this design, because of T-Rex in Jurassic Park. Because I saw that and I was like, that's the most amazing thing that's ever existed. Right? Like, I have to know more. And so obviously this is an S.
Of course.
Like it could be nothing else.
It really could not be. And like, that is, you know, I think we sometimes come across as a little harsh on paleo media, sometimes in the way people engage with it. But like, this is the most important thing about it all the time. Is like inspiring the next generation of people. I know Jurassic Park was a huge part of my life. And even though Dalton hasn't worked on dinosaurs directly, like, much yet, like, there's a tremendous number of scientific papers and scientific advancements in the understanding of squamate evolution that may not have ever been made without this design.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
This is the value. No Helioscopos. None of the stuff from your thesis that I won't talk about and spoil on camera in a YouTube video.
But hey, it's already happened at this point.
By this point, yes, the defense has happened.
Yes, and I'm sure that it will be rapidly approaching the. It'll be being rapidly captured in an amazing publication.
One can dare to dream.
I dare to dream, Dalton. Anyway, I'll stop glazing Dalton right now. Let's go back to glazing T-Rex.
Well, I think it's time we glaze our patrons.
I think we also have to put it on the...
we rank.
We got to put it on the rank.
Oh, you're right. I guess I that was a foregone conclusion to me, but we have to put it in its place.
Yes. I'm not going to stream. I'm just going to do it.
That's fine.
All right. So the astute viewer will also notice that we did have the base game T-Rex and also the feathered T-Rex as separate critters on here. This was from back when they added some of the other feather variants ages ago, and all of the other ones and all of the other like different movie models got their own bespoke like editable colors model, except for the feather Rex. The feathered Rex is just brown with no selectable patterns or anything. So we made the executive decision to, as Alex demonstrated there, just loop it into the discussion with the rest of it. So we're going to put both T-Rexes up in S tier. You know what? No. They go at the top. It's the king.
Yeah.
Hail to the king.
Hail to the king. And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for.
Spin that. No, not this time.
There's no wheel to spin.
There is no wheel to spin. We're all done.
And the skeleton crew cried, for there was no more wheel to spin.
Oh, I don't know about that.
But remember, folks, is this the end of this series? Essentially, yes. But there will be
more or less
one more episode, the retrospective.
And is this the end of the skeleton crew? Absolutely not. You
Yes,
wish.
we do.
More like we wish. No,
there will be.
It's
more
encouraging
content.
when two of them are like, yeah.
No. But we will be. We might be changing the way the channel looks a little bit. in that we're firing 3 out of the 5 members of the skeleton crew.
Guess in the
Everybody
comments
has
who's getting
to
fired.
downsize, there's a lot of tariffs on YouTubers right now, so we have to go down to 2 or 3 hosts only. Anyway, we're not firing anybody, and that's due to the effort of our good patrons who've supported us for a huge amount of this series, and I'm sure are very excited to see the stuff that we do now that it's over. It has been over 2 years of making these videos, 1 a week. It's kind of incredible. Anyway, I want to just thank insert nickname Benjamin Seepser, Christopher Bellis Jones, Aaron Anderson, Adam Olos, Blacklight Virus, Black Spectral Pig, Brett Booth, Camphibia, Chaotic Kaiju, Dino Dom, Keenan Taylor, Kevin Preem, King Zashu, Noah Riccio, Resty HBK, Squat Pump, The Wigster, Touch Connors, Wheat Mrs. Website Baryonyx, and You've. Thank you all so much for your support of the Skeleton Crew. Thank you to all of our patrons for your amazing support. We could not do this without you. This is probably going to be an incredibly long video. I'm realizing now what time it is. What's the recording runtime at now since my internet
4
crashed?
hours and 45 minutes.
Holy! All right, well,
I have some thoughts.
Do you?
I do.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you all. We will see you next time when we talk about something else.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
The oblicodon teeth are also kind of interesting because unlike most tyrannosaurid premaxillary teeth, they're unserrated, so they're just kind of chisels. Yeah.
I recall hearing that those teeth are juvenile tyrannosaur teeth.
What are you talking about?
God. I can't do the straight face.
You can't do it.